Hello, my fellow Westorians. Welcome back. It is our first, I say welcome back, but it is our first official House of the Dragon preview stream, the first of many. We don't know how long House of the Dragon will run, but we'll do preview streams for every episode, and that's a lot of fun. What is the purpose of a preview episode? Let's discuss that first. To set some expectations. Of course, there's a few predictions. We have trailers and things like that. That helps us look ahead a bit. There's related topics, too, things that we expect will be connected to topics that we raise. And, of course, there's some things we occasionally miss on Monday. You know, we're reacting to the episode less than 24 hours after it comes out. So we'll want to occasionally expand on topics as well. And in order to do that, well, we bring in some extra brain power, some extra mouth power in the form of, I made that word up.
Mouth power.
That's right.
I like that one.
Power of the mouth. That's right.
That sounds dirty.
Talking power, you know. Sometimes
puns are getting started early today, I see.
I make things up on the fly. It doesn't always work out.
You don't have great mouth power.
I don't have great mouth power.
More coffee, Aziz. More coffee.
Okay, I'll drink more coffee. But we have... to help us with this plan of Saturdays, we're bringing on guests every time, almost every time. We may occasionally not have one, but we certainly have one today, the esteemed JoeMagician. Welcome. How's it going?
Hey, guys. It's going pretty good. A little tired after the first week of House of the Dragon. A lot of videos, a lot of stuff to be made. Lost my voice on Sunday, but, it's very exciting to have this back and have everyone be into it again.
Yeah.
There's been sort of a long lull. Like, everyone tried to get excited for Fire and Blood, tried to get excited for different things, but it seems like we're all back, guys. We're all arguing. We're having a good time. And personally, I'm excited to have new things to talk about instead of like going over the same thing 1,000 times like I normally do.
Right on. Speaking of new things, we'll get to that in just a second because you nailed some of this stuff ahead of time, so you get to take a W. But before we get to that, let's take care of a few intro items, and then we'll hit the ground running. Our schedule, as to keep track of that, and make sure people are aware, every 3 o'clock on Saturday, Eastern, we'll be doing these preview streams, and every Monday at 6 Eastern, we'll be doing the spoiler-free streams with Sean. And they'll be spoiler-free because he's unsullied, and that's kind of fun. We'll be avoiding the spoilers that way.
Of note, though, is that the live stream chat on Mondays has had spoilers in it because we're not really doing it for the benefit of people in the chat. So just be aware that if you're looking at the live stream chat, just be aware of spoilers.
So you may prefer to watch the replay to avoid or you can just turn the chat off, either one. If you want to catch them, you can always watch the replay of the streams on YouTube or watch them on Spotify. The streams are on YouTube. The replays are on YouTube and Spotify. And if you want to just catch the audio-only version, you can catch that anywhere you get podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or any of those good spots, whatever you prefer. We've got some images today. We've got our favorite site that we used back in Game of Thrones' first run. It was farfaraway.site.com. Shout out to them. They have high-res images that we'll be posting throughout the episode. We always check them for their great stills. And, of course, we've got a lot of behind-the-scenes featurettes that have been dropping. HBO has just been coming at us with all sorts of behind-the-scenes stuff. It's really good. They always do a great job with that sort of thing. So we'll mix a little of that in as well.
Yeah, that behind-the-scenes featurette was like 26 minutes long. It's like every week they're doing a different behind-the-scenes documentary, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so they really know that people love the expanded material, and they're not wrong.
26 minutes. I'm glad I didn't try and watch it before we went live. I apparently didn't have time. Also, I would definitely shout out the stream with Sean. I think as really devoted A Song of Ice and Fire fans, it's hard you lose a little bit of the wonder when you know everything's coming ahead of time. It's kind of fun to see Sean literally learning it on the fly and seeing like the wheels turning ahead. Our wheels turned like 5 years ago.
Yeah, and when he says something like that, Kristen Cole guy seems all right. And you're like, well, yeah, from what he's seen, he's not wrong. Like from what he's been presented, there's no reason to hate that guy. But of course, we know differently. We have different information. So one thing for y'all folks, what are your biggest questions from episode 1? What are your biggest questions about episode 2? And speaking of big questions, when we covered Game of Thrones, we did 2 episodes a week. One was show only, one was book implications and discussions, stuff like that, book to show. For obvious reasons, we didn't think such would be needed this time around. We didn't think there would be a big impact on A Song of Ice and Fire. Sure, we expected some A Song of Ice and Fire relevant topics to pop up here and there. We didn't expect nothing huge, though. Best way to be wrong, though. Am I right? I mean, here we are at episode 1. 1 episode in, and there's a gigantic A Song of Ice and Fire bomb that, of course, is also a great plot point for House of the Dragon as a standalone point as well. Like, it works really well just within the confines of House of the Dragon, too. But those of us who know Fire and Blood, it's a whole nother layer to discuss, something we can't predict. Like you just said, Joe, there's a lot of things we know what's coming, but this, we don't know what they're going to do with this, and that's great. So that we do get some of the wonder as well. It's just, it's completely unexpected, very fertile ground. It's going to be really fun for us, and it also just makes sense, though. If you're a clever showrunner, striking a chord with both the book readers and the show people, it does make sense, doesn't it?
It worked really well. I was surprised at how they balanced that. They brought in quite a lot of allusions, direct ones to Game of Thrones. And then, like you said, they threw us dedicated fans quite a few bones in that episode. Like, even like little lines like the Promise Me, and also, what was it? The Rhaenys throwing Lyanna's favor on, what was it? Lord Baratheon's stick, and it's like, I know what that is. It was like when they played Jenny's song during season 8, that kind of thing. Also, it's fun to be able to call Aziz a sweet summer child. Didn't know this was coming, huh? Didn't see it coming. No spoilers for the books, huh? Oh, how dare you?
Yeah, I definitely was not a big on this theory, but I'm embracing it fully now, like I did with King Bran when that came around. You know, it is what it is. We can't be, we can't hold on to what we thought was right. You know, it's more fun to just embrace what's there. And
I don't think you were ever against the theory.
No, I wasn't against it.
You're just like, we're like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, exactly. I was not one of those people that's like, oh, this is a terrible idea, which there are some people like that. Yeah, but that's okay. That's their right.
Well, we've had a lot of interactions over the years, Aziz, and I will say you have a high barrier to believing things.
Yeah.
you have a low tolerance for tinfoil, so
that's true.
That's just how you are.
But it's
not like you were.
You're right. But I'll switch when the evidence is there. You know, it's there.
You're an evidence-based guy.
Yeah, and there's no doubting the evidence now. So we're on there now. It's great. We're gonna ride this out and see where it goes, and it's super fun. So yeah, you've been banging this drum for a while, and we're gonna get a few clarifications actually about where some of this came from. I know there's a little bit of confusion as to where it came from, what came from George, what came from the showrunners. We're interviewing Ryan on Monday, so that's one of the goals we have.
There you go.
It won't be like our George interview because we're not seeing him in person, and it won't be as long. But we're gonna get some good questions. We're gonna ask him about props because he's a props guy, and I want to ask him about Valyria, that huge model of Valyria. Yeah. How cool is that, right? That big.
That thing's amazing,
right? That's what I would do if I was a king. I would be a sloppy, lazy ruler like Viserys, just playing with my toys, probably.
My lord, there's an army at the gates. Listen, I'm playing Warhammer.
Yeah.
Calm down.
Yeah, there's an army at my gates too. A couple super chats before we get started. Maura Lee says, in honor of the late Queen Emma Arryn and good Queen Alysanne, as well as all the women of House Targaryen, thank you, Aziz, our Queen Ashea, and Matt, JoeMagician. Love you guys. Well, Maura, we love you too. Thank you very much for the big support. We're so excited to kick off this nice long run of excellent fun and dragony goodness. Met fan, man. My opposition in baseball. I'm a Braves fan.
There.
But in A Song of Ice and Fire, we're all one. They say, you continue to be awesome. You all continue to be awesome, paying in advance for your awesome content that I'm sure is coming. Well, thank you, Met Fan Man. We will keep it coming. We hope today's episode is exactly what you're looking for. So the first episode is called Heirs of the Dragon. We're going to spend the first half of this episode discussing the basic plot points that we expect, and then the second half talking about all the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy goodness. So stay tuned for that. Where Joe can dazzle us with his knowledge and we can piece together what we can. I mean, it's only been a week for this since this bomb has dropped. So that's the one caveat, is that we won't have figured it all out yet. But it does kind of make us wonder.
You guys haven't.
Yeah, Joe. Yeah, he's already.
I released 2 videos on it already. Well, 3 actually.
First, a quick question. Some folks wonder about the crowns. The crowns are in our intro, and then there's some discussion of crowns in the show as well. There's actually one thing I'm confused about. But the crowns in our intro are the main crowns that are to date in this point in history. There's, of course, by the time Dany comes around, there's been a lot more crowns. But Viserys is only the 5th Targaryen king, so and they don't each have a crown. So there's only been, I think, 2 crowns to this point. There's Aenys' crown and
Jaehaerys had one.
Oh no, yeah, you're right. There's 3. Jaehaerys, Aenys, and Aegon had crowns. And
we have not seen Aenys's.
We haven't seen Aenys' one. Apparently, that's the fanciest of them.
It looks like the one Viserys is wearing, doesn't it? It has the big
I guess I
thing on the
thought
front of
that
it.
was Jaehaerys' and that they just changed Jaehaerys' crown was what I assumed. Because that he
Yeah.
wore Jaehaerys' crown. So that was I didn't actually check that,
Okay,
but that was what I thought, was that they just modified what Jaehaerys' canon crown looked like.
Yeah.
The one I remember from, because I've been looking through them, that guy Amok, that guy that made all the
Yeah.
images for
Yeah.
George years ago,
He's so good.
the Jaehaerys one has just a bunch of like
Yeah, it's like a rainbow
gems
crown.
around the
He's got a
forehead.
rainbow
Yeah.
crown.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
Aenys
notable,
has
but
like kind of one like Viserys.
But yeah, no, I believe that that Viserys was known to wear Jaehaerys' crown. So I don't think that they changed that, but worth us looking into perhaps.
So those crowns are represented in our intro, but they are the House of the Dragon versions rather than the book versions. So you should be able to recognize them from that. You'll have eventually seen Aegon's crown, that's where some of the confusion lies. In the show, it says, like Viserys says, referring to his dream, his baby was wearing Aegon's iron crown. Now, Aegon's crown is supposed to be Valyrian steel, but even the book sources are confused on that. That's not just a show confusion. You'll see it called the Valyrian steel circlet that was placed on his head, but it's also said that it's iron and ruby. So I don't know which is. I'm pretty sure it's Valyrian steel, but maybe there's a little bit of iron in there also. That's how we'll do it. We'll do it like the Renly thing, where blue, green. Oh, blue, green. Renly's eyes are blue, green.
Yeah, that's true.
So this crown is Valyrian steel and iron. Let's say.
It doesn't help that it eventually just flat out disappears, so nobody really knows anymore.
Yeah.
Can't even compare it to anything.
So I assume we will be seeing it later in the season. So that's something to look forward to. Maybe not, but I would guess so, considering they mentioned it.
Ooh.
You know,
I wonder who will be wearing it. The Viserys doesn't seem to like it if he has it. He has the option. He has the accessories.
Yeah.
What are you doing, bro? Go into your inventory.
In Fire and Blood,
Cool.
one of the Kingsguard steals Viserys'
that's right.
crown and gives it to Rhaenyra, and then Aegon and Aemond end up wearing Aegon's crown. So
yeah.
that's probably when we'll see it. When maybe Kristen
They'll
Cole
bust
will
it out then.
Yeah, Kristen Cole will put it on Aegon's head or Aemond's head, or both. Actually, both in Fire and Blood both happen. So yeah.
I didn't remember that Aemond wore the crown at any point.
He does wear it. He doesn't
yeah.
call himself king. He just says, it looks better on me than it ever looked on my brother.
Kind of calling yourself king,
Yeah.
isn't it?
But he just...
It's also funny we're going to see Daemon's crown, but his is going to be more like an Ironborn crown.
Yeah, it looks kind of neat. He's carrying that hammer and that crown. It's like, yeah, he's walking in like a boss. But I guess that won't be till maybe episode 4 or 5. I don't know, 3, 4, 5. Not next. I don't think it'll be next week, though. Or tomorrow, rather. So
he has to cut his hair first.
Yeah, right. It's gotta, yeah. War makes you cut your hair short, right? So we are going to see the real intro sequence this week. Apparently, that's fun.
They did confirm that there will be intro credits in episode 2, and so I thought it'd be fun if we could speculate a little bit. Everyone could give guesses on what they think it will be. I have 2 ideas. I don't know that as 2 ideas I've seen online. I think I probably would have guessed it on my own, but I did also see them online. One is there are those columns with the statues in the Red Keep that I will put on the screen right now. There's those columns, and the idea, and they show periods in history. Each column does. So the idea that we could see history on the columns.
That makes a lot of sense for intro crawl.
Yeah, the other idea I saw was the model of Valyria, but that doesn't make as much sense to me because I don't think Valyria has as much relevance to the series to do that. But I've seen those.
It in too.
Yeah, I've seen those 2 ideas.
It would have to be finished.
Yeah, I like your
I wonder
pillars.
if we're going to see more of Dragonstone in the painted table, because
Yeah.
they put that in a ton of promos, and they did a lot of cool underlighting with it. So maybe it'll be something like that, like starting from inside the volcano and going up to like that table or something like that. It'd be really cool seeing Viserys's model, but it has to finish first.
Yeah.
He has to paint it, bro.
Yeah,
Get your
right.
paint.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about it too, is you can clearly tell it's in progress from some of the images we have on Far, Far Away site. One in particular, you can see there's just like pieces of it on the ground. And not only does it look larger than it did last week, which is a clue, there's just like unattached pieces, like extra model trains that are ready to go on. And there's multiple shots of him holding a dragon like figurine too. Yeah, here's Shay's got it up there on screen now. Look, you can see this pieces on the ground there. So he's just like adding more to it. So yeah, so cool. I will repeat that I want that.
Want that whole thing?
I want that whole thing. I would dedicate a whole room to it. I don't have it. We don't really have a room to dedicate to it, but we would find a way. We would find we would usurp the purpose of whatever room for that.
Well, George was talking about during your interview about how he sold some of the rights to figurines. I wonder who owns the rights to the Valyrian steel model.
Yeah, good question. Good question.
If at HBO put that thing out, we're buying it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Can you imagine having that model of Valyria in our house?
They would just keep
Amazing.
adding like new like flesh pit expansion for your models. Draconic
Fire
Temple.
Mage Tower too. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and they're charging Warhammer prices. Yeah, we would all go broke quickly. That stuff is not cheap. Man, they charge
No, it's not.
buttload for that. So real quick, a few behind the scenes things on top of that, because we're talking about stuff that feels sort of behind the scenes ish, talking about models and intros and things like that. Michael Carter, the guy playing Jaehaerys, who was Bib Fortuna, if you didn't know, he didn't want to have a speaking role, and I wonder why. He just was content to sit there and be Jaehaerys, and I think that worked, though. I think just having him sit there gave him more gravitas and kept him more mysterious, not having him speak.
Yeah, I think that was a good choice. It was really interesting to me that he said, I don't want to play a speaking part. Give me a non-speaking role, because he's not like a huge actor either, so that's quite an interesting thing. But I really loved that Ryan Condal talked about how he was fanboying out because this was Bib Fortuna from Star Wars. So I was like, oh, yes, he's got good taste.
Yeah.
It also kind of works with sort of the introduction we got from the Mad King, where he was featured quite a lot in Game of Thrones, like in images, but he never said anything except for the burn them all thing. I wonder if they're going to play him like that. He's going to be the mysterious, kind of magically attuned weird king that kind of screwed up everything for the current timeline.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if they're going to talk about him more, because we know that there's going to be
they're going to talk about him more.
Yeah.
His precedent and the Great Council, that's coming up.
Yeah.
There's no way that's not coming up.
Right, that's got to come up. And Harrenhal, I talked about a lot how that was built. That's really cool. Another reason to watch that BTS thing, just how they did the green screen and put all that together. Someone we've been in contact with, Kieran Belshaw, was featured a bit in that, and he's a concept artist, someone we've engaged with in the past. Yeah,
we met him at Con of Thrones. He was one of the guests there, and I spent some time with him, and so I was just watching the special, and I was like, hey, it's Kieran. How cool. And as I mentioned, we get a closer look at those columns, right? And if you don't know what I'm referring to, there are columns in the throne room where you can see the kings that have come before Viserys. But the thing that I didn't catch before was that one of the columns is unfinished. I have it on the screen right now. That's going to be Viserys' column. So we should see as time passes, that column get carved out and sculpted and more things added to it.
It really is an interesting statement on how a king is concerned about his legacy, and he sees it being carved in front of him, and how that's like, it's a much more personal this way rather than like, how will you be remembered? He's seeing it happen in front of him. Like, this is how I'm going to be remembered. So, what do you think, Joe?
Doing that way kind of puts like a bookend though on how far the dynasty can go, because you only have so many columns. What are you going to do when you can run out?
Yeah.
You're going to put them on the walls or something? Also, I cannot believe that they left up Maegor's statue. Jaehaerys didn't tear that thing down. Why not? Screw Maegor. Get him out of here.
I'm wondering when we're going to see all of these statues removed, because they're not there in the main series. So, at some point they had to get rid of them. I'm guessing when Robert came into power, and no sooner than that. But
that's harsh, because it's like we hear about him putting all the skulls in the basement, which is one thing, but if he's just smashing these historic columns, that feels like a crime against history. But Robert hated the Targaryens.
King's Landing.
Yeah, that's true. So you definitely wouldn't put it past Robert doing that. In fact, I kind of expected, given they are gone, and it probably wasn't someone before him. Like, I don't know, would Aerys tear them down? Like, why would one of the other kings do that? Baelor the Blessed? I don't know. It just doesn't, even for him, I don't see why he would do that. So, yeah.
It's the same thing as the weirwood, like the one on your fancy shirt there. At some point, that thing's gone.
Yeah, it's burning up or getting cut down, rather.
You're right. All right, well, let's get into some specific plot threads, and let's start with Prince Daemon. Another callback to Ryan Condal saying seeing Daemon in his armor on screen says like he's a living armored dragon. Here's a shot.
Oh wait, first before that.
Okay.
2 Daemons on
Two
screen
Daemons!
at the same time. Now you can see at the same time the front and the back of the armor.
Yeah.
That really tickled me. That's from the behind the scenes thing, and that's where Ryan said he was a living armored dragon.
Boy, it took him a while to make that set of armor. Well, 2 sets of that armor.
Yeah. But then we have Daemon sulking on Dragonstone here, looking very moody.
So this is presumably
As
he goes there on his dragon with Mysaria instead of going to the Vale, and he's just chilling there until he goes to steal that egg. Or maybe he's taken the egg first. Not clear the order of things, but probably this happens and then he goes and steals the egg and then he's confronted about it.
And they're like, "Get out of Dragonstone. You have to leave." Okay, it says reconnection successful. I don't know that we actually had to drop out, but
anyway,
it alerted
keep going.
me.
I can just say that again.
Yes, start your sentence over. Great.
Okay. There's also from the books, it's in response to Mysaria getting pregnant, Daemon saying, "I'm gonna give my child a dragon egg."
Yeah.
He is allowed to live there for quite a while. It's the egg that makes Viserys say, "Hey, by the way, you don't live here anymore. Get out."
Yeah.
And that's when we see Otto show up with also. Did you guys catch during the coming weeks episode? They have Rhaenyra and Syrax flying up onto the causeway, but she lands behind Otto's. Is that to threaten them, or is she supporting them?
Yeah, it's unclear.
Now I'm gonna say that Rhaenyra is doing her dad's bidding and backing up Otto, taking the role of the heir. This is the kind of thing she has to do, and so I'm guessing that she's facing against Daemon here, which is going to be awkward for her.
Yeah, I would guess that too. It certainly, if she was being aggressive towards Otto's side, you could see her doing what you're saying there, Joe, like taking up like pincering move there. But we also know, we can be pretty sure it won't come to blood, so that maybe isn't super meaningful in terms of
and
what will
spoilers, he
happen.
does give up the egg.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, he's gonna give up the
He doesn't win. He doesn't win that encounter.
Right, he does back down. He pulls his sword and points it, and then something gets him to back down. Maybe Rhaenyra, in fact, that would work. Like
very well be.
He would. He backing down to Otto might be too much of a pride thing for him, but backing down to Rhaenyra, he could do that. He likes her. He doesn't have this issue with her.
Doesn't want to ruin that relationship that he's developing.
Yeah, he's been developing.
Developing. I like the cough there. The meaningful cough.
I almost said another word.
The suggestive cough. It says it all. So the egg thing is going to be neat. I'm very curious to watch him go through the process of stealing it and climbing into a cave or whatever's going to happen there. And this is presumably also what turns him towards the Stepstones, right? He has to get going towards that, and we'll pick that thread up when it occurs. There's not a lot of potential things to discuss as far as going to the Stepstones. We'll get to that when we get there. But a couple other random things associated with Daemon. One thing that's going to be neat here is when we're discussing these main plot threads, they all just really wrap into each other so nicely. Like every one of these plots connects to the other ones, which is something that's different about main Game of Thrones. Early on, there wasn't an obvious connection to Daenerys and everyone else, other than that she wanted the throne, but the connections were more like slow building. Whereas this, it's kind of quickly, everyone is entangled in relationships, political maneuverings, and other things. But just some questions for y'all. JoeMagician, you can weigh in if you think you have an answer on any of these. When Mysaria was talking about, I've got a silver-haired lady for you, or just offering him other women when he couldn't finish, I wonder if that was a little bit of like foreshadowing for the brothel queens subplot, which probably they won't do, but they may talk about. I doubt that's actually going to happen, but Mysaria suggested it might happen.
Do you think it even happened in the books?
No,
it's one of Mushroom stories, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it happened. I think it was suggested, but I don't think it happened. Mushroom says it did happen, but I don't think it did either. It seems there'd be more corroboration.
I think it might happen. I mean, I think there might be a little brothel action. Not to that extent, but I don't know. I think there might be a little something.
If y'all don't remember what I'm talking about, we probably should
you're right.
describe this a little better. Well, Mysaria suggested sending Alicent and her some of her other women to be
her daughter.
Her daughter.
It was Helena, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess it was Helena. I was thinking, I was hesitating on that because Helena's so young, but that's Mazzaria for you.
Yeah.
Suggested they be punished by being forced to work in a brothel, and you could pay to hook up with the queen and her daughter. So, yeah, we hope that didn't happen, or doesn't happen, especially because they said they're avoiding sexual violence this season. So it would be even harder for them to do that. If they did it, they probably won't show it. It won't.
I mean, that would be a future season, anyways, right?
Oh yeah, good point. They didn't commit to not doing that in future seasons. That's a good point. So we'll see.
Although maybe they're more likely to veer away from it after how hard everyone responded to the stuff this season.
I agree. So I don't think they're going to do that, but they may have Mysaria threaten that. I think they might do that.
Yes, they might still have it brought up.
Yeah,
the threat. I think
whether or not this is one of those things from Fire and Blood that has always been sort of a fandom interpretation that I never really bought, that Rhaenyra is a really cruel person. And I don't think we're going to get that from her. And that would be an exceptionally cruel thing to do.
Yes.
It would be maybe the worst thing that happens in the dance if it was true, or close to it.
It would be up there. You'll be a nominee. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So another big question is
Daemon maybe.
Daemon maybe. Yeah. We already have our Visenya, but even Visenya wasn't that cruel. Well, I don't think so. We'll see. More about Visenya. We'll find out more about Visenya in the future, hopefully. But
true.
So about the song, of course, we're going to come back to this in earnest at the end of the episode. But in terms of Daemon, was he ever told about it? That's a question that we have going forward. I would guess no, because when he's telling Rhaenyra, he's like, your brother or your uncle isn't the stuff of kings, but you are. So like that's a pretty strong hint that he didn't see him as worthy of the secret or trust. On the other hand, maybe giving him something to be serious about might have
been a good thing for him.
But
it might have weighed him down a little bit.
So and it opens up a whole bigger question: is it really just heir to heir, or is there a few other people in on it? I would have to think more people know, because that's too risky for it to just someone dies and you lose the secret forever. And Aegon, surely, speaking of Visenya, I really can't imagine Aegon didn't talk to his sisters about it before the conquest. That would be pretty weird. So what's your take on Daemon knowing? And then we'll save the rest for later.
So in principle, I would think that Viserys is so conscientious she would do it, but I think based on what they've shown this episode, and in particular, one of the primary problems that they had them talk about is Daemon yelling at Viserys that you never trusted me, that you never made me your right hand, that you never kept me close to you when I could have been there protecting you, and it works as a character moment to back that up. Like, why didn't Viserys ever do this? The two things are linked. That's why he never thought Daemon was serious enough or a potential good ruler, and that's why he pushed him away. But the two things, I love how the dream thing continues to push into Viserys's logic throughout the episode, and it probably will going forward. This is one of the things that I talked about in my videos and past live streams and many other videos is it's one of those things you should always keep in the back of your head, that they have this secret motivation going on. So there's always going to be another reason for why they do something, but there should also be this especially important decision. So I think it works that way. But as to would characters tell each other like different things, I think it's probably a little bit overblown the way that Viserys said it. Like, he was never alive for any of those heirs talking to the kings,
right?
So I don't know how he would know. Like, would Jaehaerys go, okay, so Viserys, there's this thing, and by the way, Aenys told me, he told Rhaena, also he told Alice, saying we didn't tell Maegor to screw Maegor. Also Aegon told both of them, and it's like,
shared the tea with him.
That level of gossip probably wasn't there. And you have to assume, when you look at characters like Alice, she acts in a way like she knows about the prophecy. She goes to the Night's Watch, she gives them a new gift, she gets Alaric to give it up, she reinforces the Night's Watch, she does all this stuff, so she knows. So it clearly is not just heir to king. And I wouldn't be shocked if Aenys told all of his kids, because he seems to be very concerned about it, even though he's often played off as sort of like a king that's sort of playing his harp, having a good time. He's a very intelligent person. He just has a different strategy, and his strategy is alliances, so it would make sense character-wise that he would do that.
I agree. Aenys is the most like Viserys of all the kings that we've seen as far as his methods. He's maybe even softer or nicer, but definitely someone who was like a people pleaser, and that was his way of keeping the realm together.
Aenys.
That is Aenys, So that's something that we'll certainly see more on, but it's a good table setter for what we expect, and just to raise the general question of who knew and who didn't, which Targaryens were trusted, which ones weren't, and that's a question going forward.
And who Rhaenyra will end up telling.
Yeah.
She has two things. One, she'll tell Daemon, you would assume, but I would guess that she will tell Daemon. But two is when or if she tells any of her children, right? Like,
yeah, that's a
weighty thing to bring up to your child. Like, it's a talk about like difficult conversation, like the birds and the bees, like the birds, the bees, and the others kind of thing.
And I think
and the others.
I think there's a very good chance that at least Jace is told. I mean, that's very likely, especially when you think about the fact that even Viserys sat Jace on his knee and was like, "Son, this throne will be, well, he's grandson. This throne will be yours one day." You know, so that strongly implies he's in on the secrets, especially when we get into him with his pact of ice and fire and Sarah Snow.
Yeah, I think my call on what I think is that Rhaenyra is going to very quickly get very burnt out on having to tell her heirs this secret, and she's gonna be like, "I don't want to do this again. I've already had to like put this weight onto two children, you know, like I feel like she'll get tired of doing it.
And maybe wait a little longer, and then that'll be a mistake to wait, and then oops.
That's kind of how I feel.
After the first one, she just makes a PowerPoint and just shows it to the ones afterwards. Listen, this is what you need to know. We've been through this.
To open, break glass upon case of you are now king.
If heir, read dagger.
If heir, read dagger. That's great. So let's move ahead to, speaking of king and new heir, that's a good segue to discussions of such. Rhaenyra also looking quite dragony in this scene. Look at those scales. That's a great outfit there. I like that a lot. And you notice the hand, it's like got a hand glove thing where it's wrapped over her hands there. You can see she's wearing this outfit in a few other scenes.
It's her riding outfit for dragon riding, as you could guess. She's about to be or has just been sent off to go deal with this Daemon situation. So she's got to be dressed up for it.
Very good call. That's got to be it. Yeah. She's getting ready to be deployed.
Battle armor.
But no, I mean, I'm excited about it. I have to say, every time I see a new costume, I can't help but think about the cosplayers who are going to do that at conventions. I'm like,
is this going to be one? Yeah.
Like this one has to be, because people are going to want to wear some pants, not just dresses all the time. I think this one will be popular.
This one is more adaptable, to daily wear.
When I first saw this, it looked a lot like Daenerys, but more than I'm looking at it, it kind of looks like Blackfish. His weird scale shoulders.
Oh.
It looks a lot like that.
Fish, dragons, they all have scales. That's true. You're right. So I guess we'll be hearing more lore. I think Viserys is going to have more to say than just, "Hey, I told you the prophecy. We're done." That's all I have to say. So there's got to be, you figure there'll be future conversations. There's this moment in one of the trailers where she's reading the dagger. You referenced that already. Mm-hmm. We guess that's this next episode. It might not be, but regardless, that proves there's more to come in terms of that whole thing. She's going to be more present in council, not just pouring wine. Presumably she'll be making decisions or weighing in, which might be where we see some of the friction start. If some of the people who are kind of anti-woman might start like arguing with her. I don't know. There's ways for them to do this that seem kind of straightforward. And
we're going to see that strong lord be more of a jerk.
Lionel.
Yeah.
How dare women?
Yeah, I know. I feel like he's gonna say something. He's gonna say something asinine at some point again.
I really wonder what Melos and Otto are gonna do, because it seems like Melos keeps like setting things up for Otto. Like when Otto was gonna bring up Rhaenyra to get Daemon out of the way, it was Melos who brought it up. He was like, "Well, we could just go by the standard," and they're like, "Who? What do you mean?" And he's like, and then Hightower says, "The king's firstborn child." It's like they practiced how to bring this up ahead of time. So Melos being the Grand Maester and the Citadel connections with Hightower, always got to keep an eye out on that. So those two will probably, whatever they do, they'll probably be working together. I guess that's the point of that.
It's interesting seeing the exact dynamics too, because we're used to, from the Lannister small council, pretty much everyone being on Tywin's side the whole time, or just not. Or gets just saying screw Tyrion, whatever he thinks. But here we see the factions where, as you said, it's Beesbury, Melos, and Otto. Corlys is sort of doing his own thing. Daemon's also doing his own thing. And Viserys is more on Daemon's side than usual. I think the wild card actually is Lionel Strong, because there comment Daemon made to him about what he thinks about the law, and Lionel looked like he was upset at being put on the spot about it.
Yes.
Like maybe Daemon knows that he doesn't agree with the other guys, but he doesn't want to be the squeaky wheel, so to speak. He's happy being just the master of laws rather than potentially endangering his position.
What's interesting to me is that like Lyman has kind of been on Otto's side of things, but that's not really going to work out for him. Like ultimately, the Hightowers are not going to repay any sort of loyalty he's had to them during these council meetings.
No, and that's an important point, O'Shea. Great call, because Beesbury is a vassal of Hightower. That is lost in the shuffle a lot of times. So when Cole kills Beesbury, and the Beesburys are like, hey, our own overlord supported this and was no one's getting punished for this. That's going to be a big part of why Costain and Beesbury and some of the other Hightower vassals do not support their own liege lords, and they side with the Blacks. So they have a very straightforward reason for that. They killed our lord. I mean, that's vassal feudal relationship 101. You know, you murder our lord, we're not on your side. You're supposed to stand up for that.
The Strongs are also super precarious right now. Like they keep talking about like Otto's second son, he has nothing. No, he has Old Town behind him. Clearly they're going to support whatever he does. Lionel Strong literally has no one behind him. They are an extremely minor house. Harrenhal's not worth crap. Harwin and Larys are not super popular, so Lionel is extremely at risk of losing power here with no support. So that's probably what Daemon is sort of pushing at him at. Like, I'll be the guy to protect you, Lionel, if you actually back me.
You need to take a side. Yeah, he wants to make him maybe declare it openly or something to force him to stop walking that tightrope.
Right.
And like you said,
he doesn't want to.
Yeah, and like you said about Corlys, an important angle to him. He's kind of doing his own thing, but now he's got something he can do. He sees an opportunity, which is, this new heir of yours is unmarried, is she? Yes. So that needs to be fixed. We have to have a husband for her, don't we? So that's clearly going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited to see all the different suitors for Rhaenyra. That's gonna be really fun to see like little glimpses of different houses.
Maybe we'll get Fool Frey and some of these others. The Black.
We know we're gonna see the Lannister twins, for example. So one of them will be the suitor. We'll see Jason. So that'll be our introduction to them as well.
Right.
I wonder if we'll see a young Cregan.
I think a little too young. I don't know. More importantly, they won't cast him in season 1 because they want to keep casting for season 2, so they don't have to recast. So that I think more important is the behind the scenes meta reasons why we wouldn't see him.
I wonder if the change to Gwaine Hightower was to make him marriageable. I wonder if Otto will suggest Gwaine marry Rhaenyra.
It's interesting. Yeah, I wonder if he's currently married. Yeah, and they did change him to be the eldest son and not the youngest son.
That might be
they
why.
flip-flopped a lot of ages. Like Laenor's older than Laena now.
Yeah,
isn't he?
Laenor's older than Laena. What they did was that they just didn't age Laena up. They aged Rhaenyra up, and Laena, they aged a bunch of people up, but kept her age down. Like I keep saying, they aged her down, but really that's not true. She's the same age she was in relation to Viserys. In the books,
Okay. Yeah, I get some of that confused too. I think I told someone the other day that they changed Alicent's age and not Rhaenyra's age.
Yeah, it's the opposite. It's like Alicent was 18, and it's really more like they're both 16, 17. We haven't gotten a clear age on them, but my guess is that they're 16 to 18 years old.
Yeah,
Alicent and Rhaenyra, whereas Laenor is maybe 14 and Laena is 12, so she's the same age.
Okay, right on.
I'm kind of hoping we get to see a 6 or 7 year old Cregan Stark, and he has the same stupid floppy haircut from Bran.
That would be a way to have him in there. They could cast as some boy, because then it won't be
just have a boy and say my heir Cregan, or what? Actually, no. The relationship at that time.
Yeah, it would not be very straightforward. Yeah, I don't think it would just be the
heir. And this kid Cregan. Yeah. If you think about him, look at his stupid haircut. Anyway, on to other Starks.
Yeah, because we have Bernard who becomes regent for Cregan because Rickon dies young, or Rickard, and whichever.
Barth again somehow gets in there or something.
Yeah. So then we were guessing that
it's complicated.
That Stark who got his face completely bashed in was one of Bernard's sons, was our guess. Yeah. Anyway, so another thing that Rhaenyra has now, another thing that being heir gives her more clout, gives her more right to make decisions, even if it's not entirely clear what her, who she can tell what to do. Having a say in who is chosen for the Kingsguard. is a thing, and we can see Kristen Cole in Kingsguard armor, which is pretty clear what's going to happen there. We knew that would happen eventually anyway, pretty quickly.
So I guess my question is, are we going to see Ryan Redwine die? Just like he's just going to die peacefully, and then Harold Westerling, who that, as you could see, Westerling was Rhaenyra's guard. That was specifically her guard.
And Ryan was always with Viserys. Yeah, you could see him.
And so it seems that Ryan will die. Westerling will be, raised up, and they'll be like, "Hey, choose your own guard."
And she's like, "Oh, that guy, the handsome Dornish guy. That's who I want."
Someone should have realized at some point in this, like, this is a dangerous thing that they're letting her do. I don't know.
Don't let the teenage girl choose. I mean, not when it comes to the.
Don't let her choose the hot guy.
Yeah,
make better decisions.
Yeah. Another example of they're just not thinking this through. They're just like, well, she needs to make her own mistakes. Okay, well, maybe not that mistake.
To be fair, most of the Kingsguard are inconsequential. It is abnormal that Kristen rose so fast, so high.
That's true. They didn't see this coming because it is somewhat unprecedented. Yeah, that's fair. So
I feel like we might see this debate happen when she names him. When they are sitting there deciding, well, should it be this guy or this guy or this guy? There might be those exact quibbles raised.
Yeah. So it looks like Corley's complained. Let's talk about moving on to the sea snake and the triarch and the stepstones.
I don't want to talk about the balls. We got balls.
We got balls. Oh, the little setup balls.
Yeah, I had all these pictures of them.
Okay, let's talk about those real quick.
I specifically wanted. We just had a cat fall down. He just fell off my lap. But no, JoeMagician had a great YouTube short about the balls, so I wanted him to speak to them,
really
speak
good.
to balls, and I wanted to put on the screen pictures of the balls. As you can see, a close-up look. They each have their own ball.
It looks like a mouse ball.
Yeah, it does look like the trackball mouse ball. That you see right there.
I know they're stones. I called them balls in the short specifically to make the joke. So that's why I did it that way. But yeah, like a lot of people have been asking, like, what's going on? What are these things? Why are they putting them in that? And the set designer and I forget what the other person's title was, but they basically said they made it up, and it was like this cool idea that it's sort of like the start of the meeting sort of thing. Like, quorum, if you ever like go to like sort of corporate meetings, everyone's milling around and someone goes like, all right, let's get down to business. It's sort of that. So you take your individual ball, you put it in the saucer, and that means you're clocked in, you're ready to go. I'm now, master of coin. I'm now hand of the king. All the fun times sort of thing are over. Which was a little, I don't know, like some people were like, oh, is there historical precedent or anything like that? And it's like, no, it doesn't seem like it. It seems like they sort of made up a cool idea that's basically like a punch clock, but with stones.
Yeah, imagine it like if let's say that Otto was like, I can't make it to the meeting today, but I want to send a representative, like he might give them the ball or whatever, the stone.
Get on the ball.
That's
where the phrase "on the ball" comes from. Yeah. They look kind of like dragon eggs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt's got some of his own there. That one looks like a baseball.
Yeah, this one does look like a baseball.
I have a baseball,
he has a baseball, but also Lionel Strong's look like a baseball with like the. Yeah. It's cool how his.
Oh, is that his colors?
It is his colors. See,
colors of the
it has a green, red, and blue on each side, so that is cool. Which
Damon's is black.
Which speaks to the idea that they made a new ball for him. Like for each one, which holds up because as you can see here. Otto's has green and gold, and the Hightower sigil and the Reach is green, so it makes they seem somewhat specialized.
Kind of looks like a dragon eye.
Yeah,
it's like a white ball with like a mark on the top. So I think that looks like a dragon eye to me.
Yeah.
Corlys's is appropriately
sea-like,
aquatic.
Aquatic. Yeah. I really like the Maester one, which looks like
all the chains
super
around
chain.
it.
That's one that they probably don't have to switch out.
Kind of like the Astrolabe.
Yeah, it is kind of like that.
So
it's a cool. Yeah, it makes sense, and it adds a little bit something different to the small council. It kind of like puts their own mark on it to start, because this is nowhere in any book. This isn't a thing. Yeah. They straight up have made it up, but it's a good makeup.
Yeah,
I'm happy
it's
they
great.
did it.
Yeah, I like the idea of Daemon being like, why? Someone being like, why can't we start the council? Well, Daemon won't put his ball. He just won't.
He just like plays with it. He's like literally me, just like throwing his ball in the air. Like, I don't know. I don't want to start the meeting.
Then he pulls it back. He's like, all right, I'm gonna psych. It's like, damn it, we can't start until he puts his ball in.
D-Cell points out
he takes autos and throws it across the room.
They'll make great merchandise.
Oh,
I didn't even think about the fact more stuff for them to sell. I'm like, which one are we gonna get? I think I want the Maester one.
We can eat the whole set to put out at dinner.
Set. Yeah, at dinner. Clock in.
You guys start doing that at home. Aziz, put your stone in the thing so we can eat, damn it.
We're gonna get them, absolutely.
We put it in when we go live. It's like, oh, don't interrupt them. They're clearly the stones in the cup. They're doing a live stream.
Someone Lore of Lore says, do they ever play marbles with them? I'm just picturing them all like on the ground, racing. Marble racing with those
with those things.
I think some of them would be at a disadvantage if you look at how they've got like bumps and like some of them.
That Maester one can't roll straight.
No, I don't think that one is a good racing marble.
They did. I'll note that they did specifically in the original interview. I took Hollywood Reporter because that was just the one that had the Condal's comment on it. But they did literally call them marbles. So they might actually sell
council marbles. When the council goes crazy, you could say they've lost their marbles.
Oh my God! How do you do this?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so this is
amazing stuff.
Let's talk about the Sea Snake, the Triarchy, and the Steps. There's not much to say here. This plot hasn't really gotten started yet. We kind of know how it's going to go. There'll probably be a few surprises, but it hasn't started yet, so the surprises are yet to come, if there are indeed some.
We're going to meet this guy, Kragus Crab Feeder.
Yeah, now, is he going to have been burned? Is that what the deal is? Or
will he already have been burned, or are we going to see him get burned, is my question.
Yeah.
Will he start out looking like this, or will we see this happen?
Yeah, maybe something else entirely, like he had grayscale or something else. Who knows? But it could.
He looks burned to me.
I'm gonna guess Dragonfire. Yeah, I'm gonna guess Dragonfire.
He's also wearing what looks like a Sons of the Harpy mask, which was confusing to me.
Like that,
like a burned kind of melted one.
Yes.
Maybe they're just reusing an old prop, but he's definitely not from Slaver's Bay. So I was confused about what that is.
Yeah, I agree. And the Lyseni are fairly important. We did an episode on them a few weeks ago. It was our second to last episode before getting into House of the Dragon coverage, and they're a pretty big deal. They haven't come to the fore yet, but Mazari is Lysene as well. So there's hints here and there, but the Triarchy is obviously 1/3 Lysene. That character is Lysene. Cragast Drahar. So the Lyseni are important. The Rogaris probably won't be a part of the show, but they might be. They're certainly a big part of the aftermath of the dance. So keep that in mind. So we'll see how that goes. Rhaenys apparently are going to push Laena on Viserys from some behind the scenes, like a little clip.
And that's not a change from the books. That happens. No, they want her to be the queen, and so it's a really shitty thing that they do. Like, it's not good, but they're very ambitious. That's what we've seen, is that Corlys and Rhaenys are ambitious people.
Yep. Rhaenys wanted to be queen, and this is, if she can't be queen, she could be mother of the queen. That's close. It's closer than she was, and it's well established Corlys is ambitious. So
basically Viserys is gonna go, nah, she's too young for me, and then they're gonna be like, well, Rhaenyra needs a husband, and I'm curious how much they'll be twisting his arm, or how much he'll be like, yeah, let's do it, that's a great idea, because it is a good idea, like it is a smart decision. I think I don't really think they need to push him much to do it, to just be like, that's a good fit.
That is a good fit. Everything else, ignoring everything else, like they're about the same age. He's that's the richest house. Corlys is obviously an important guy to have on your side.
Rival claimants.
Rhaenys brings the other
rider.
Brings Rhaenys into the fold.
Yeah.
It erases some of her getting voted out or whatever. It soothes that over a little bit. Yeah. So politically it makes a ton of sense. But of course, which is why presumably George wrote this important wrinkle in there, which is Laenor himself is the wrinkle, that he is not so into women.
Yeah, there's a big wrinkle there. I'm also curious about the reaction to this, because one of the big things out of episode 1 was everyone going, Otto is a piece of shit. He's clearly pimping out his daughter. But clearly from what we've seen already from episode 2, there was that clip going around on Twitter. Like, Laena is explicitly told that she's there to seduce and marry Viserys. So, but everyone really likes Rhaenys and Corlys, so I'm wondering if that will change the reaction to a little bit. Will it be equally like, wow, they're a lot worse than I thought, or is there going to be a lot more like, well, they're cool, and I don't like Otto.
I think there's going to be some hypocrisy from people and how they treat
Shocking,
them.
probably.
I do think so, but somewhat rightfully, because there is a difference. I don't want to be an apologist here, but there is a difference between suggesting that your daughter marry the king to eventually be bedded and sending your daughter to seduce the king in his bed chamber. Like there is a difference there.
Yeah, I think it's a little dirtier with him being in grief and all that. At least the Velaryons are going to wait a little bit.
You know, the grief part isn't the dirty part to me, but I agree. I agree though that they're slightly different situations.
Yeah.
But as anyone who watched the clip saw, like they do literally have a line where Laena's like, "Well, you won't bed me till I'm 14," you know.
And
so
he goes, like, to Viserys' credit, he's like, ugh.
Yeah. So you like, I think if they wanted,
grim sentence.
If they wanted to make Corlys and Rhaenys more likable, they would have had a clause that they said like, "You won't bet her till she's 18," you know, like maybe like there's a way they could have made them more palatable, and they didn't. But again, I don't think like they don't want to whitewash these characters. They want to show like, hey, people suck.
Yeah, and this is one of the ways in which they suck. They use their children as ways to rise up, as ways to climb the ladder. It's an extension of this theme from the first episode of women are used this way for their wombs. So are the fruits of those wombs. The children get abused in similar ways, whether they're boys or girls, but the girls more so, clearly, because of things like this. Like the boys aren't being told they have to marry a woman who's that much older and bed them when they're 14. So anyway.
Also, just quickly, a common reaction to Rhaenys in the first episode was her political prowess. How she was sitting there at the tournament and she was reading all the situations. She was explaining what's going on. This is part of that. Mm-hmm. Like the fact that she is pushing Laena forward and making the promise is like that Laena won't have to bed him until she's 14 or whatever, is because Rhaenys knows how the game is played. She knows what Otto is doing and she has to counter him. And it's politically savvy, but being politically savvy often means selling your soul.
Yeah, and there is some survival in that too. Yes, there's ambition, but there is also what will Otto do? Just like they're worried about what Daemon would do if he became king. Like, well, what would what would Otto do if he's? Yeah, they see his ambition, they see his closeness to the king and what he's going for. So and Corlys has been pushed aside by him. He doesn't like Otto, probably. Like he was. I mean, most of them probably don't.
Who likes Otto?
Yeah, he's not the most likable guy, you know.
Yeah, I think he's just so severe with people. He's just not likable. It's like even when he's not doing the worst thing, he's just not likable in how he approaches it.
Yeah. He's so good at that role. Rhys Ifans is nailing it. Even though I've only seen one episode, he's just like so much the like I'm in charge guy. Like I'm his voice and his demeanor is bearing. Yeah, it's like he's nailing it. So yeah,
especially because he normally plays likable characters.
Oh, really?
He's playing such an asshole is actually to his credit.
I actually don't have a lot of experience seeing him. I'm not sure I've seen him before this. So that's that's cool. Otto, he uses that heir for a day scene to get Daemon off the council, but it's a short-sighted play, just like his other half measures that he calls them. To be fair, Viserys has checked his attempts to get Daemon removed from the council entirely, which is one of the things I would agree with Otto on. He's like, yeah, well, honestly, I want to get him off the council entirely. And in that, I think he's being honest, and I can see why he wants to get Daemon off the council. Likewise, I see why Daemon wants Otto off the council. So that's not defending one isn't agreeing with the other. But I love how they did that. We reiterated this was a thing for Fire and Blood. There's a lot of ambiguity in that scene. With the heir for a day, and it's a great capturing of what Fire and Blood presents us. So given we don't discuss the Fire and Blood stuff too much on Mondays, I wanted to bring that up and get your take on this, JoeMagician, and how that is a great example of the ambiguity we get from Fire and Blood of the multiple sources, and how maybe we're going to see lots more of that throughout the season. I was really wondering how they were going to do that. This was a great example. What did you think?
Yeah, it's I especially love that they cut away before Daemon actually says it. Because the way Matt Smith was playing it is that in the way he tried to explain it to Viserys, he's clearly saying that he is heavily distraught over what happened, but he's trying to, I guess, he has his own way of grieving. That's what he said to Viserys. Yeah. So his way was he was trying to surround himself with friends. He was trying to like go out drinking and maybe lighten himself up, but he clearly couldn't. He was sitting there on his own, not talking to anybody. So I'm guessing he said heir for the day with a a very different tone, but the tone is lost because Otto presented it in such a harsh way. And I think that's a really good example of what George said in the interview you guys had about how history distorts things. Like we're talking like the history of the night before, and clearly that is going to go down in history, and it's something that was probably very different depending on what Daemon actually said. And Daemon does look, his reaction to Viserys is one of he knows he did wrong, but he also, I think, recognizes that Viserys isn't in a mood to hear his argument back. He doesn't want to hear that. He's like, listen, I was toasting the kid. I was saying it in a sad way. Viserys has the Kingsguard lined up in front of him. He has Blackfire out. He's wearing his crown. He's not there to listen.
He's already threatened to cut his tongue out.
Yeah, he's using some emotional intelligence, I think, to be like, I can mend this fence later. But then, of course, he can't.
He can't because he immediately gets stripped of his title. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to clarify. I think when I spoke on Monday, I kind of, I don't want to say I was apologetic or excused Daemon's actions or said that he was sad, but I just want to clarify. I think he was sad about what they said about him. I don't think he was sad about Prince Balon. I don't really think that he felt much sadness at all about that, to be honest. But I think that he felt shitty for how he's treated personally. I think it was a selfish sadness. I do, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't still sad about it.
I didn't read it that way because if you watch him at the funeral, he's legitimately sad. He's sad at the funeral.
I might have. I honestly, I feel like he might have been sadder at Emma's death than at Balon. Maybe like.
Oh yeah, maybe it was Emma.
Maybe. My point is that I don't really think that he was mourning the young prince. I guess.
I think he was sad. That's possible, but he was definitely mourning. Like he was definitely feeling empathy for his brother because he was sad.
Yeah. I could say.
Oh, maybe that's it.
Yeah, maybe he felt empathy for his brother. Maybe he felt empathy for Rhaenyra and their loss. But I think he himself was not. I don't think there's any real part of him that was like, "Oh, I'm sad that child that was in the way of the throne is gone."
Maybe that's the least sad thing for him out of all.
Yeah. He's like, I don't think he's happy about it though. I don't think he's happy about it. But I just wanted to make it clear what I thought about Daemon. He's very complex. His emotions are mixed up, and they're not just one thing either.
Right on. Let's talk briefly about
it's Matt Smith that we're even talking about.
It's
a debate.
True. He did have that ambiguity on his face. It was very good. It's just one of the reasons why, Sean Brooke and Millie Alcock caught our attention more as actors, but Matt Smith gets a lot of credit too. It's not like those were the only two great actors there. There was a lot of great acting. Do you have any thoughts on the Maesters here? The Maester conspiracy is a ongoing thing, and we've considered how it may apply here. I have a take. Let's start off with a take from John Malarkey, who wrote us today. I thought it was a very good one. We brought up the possibility that maybe alternate to conspiracy theories, which doesn't mean that the conspiracy theories aren't valid, but we also have to present the other possibilities. One of which is that I suggested on Monday, maybe just Maester Mellis isn't is just getting older, and he's just not all there anymore. John Malarkey suggests maybe he's just not that good of a healer in the first place. Maesters have a lot of jobs. History, politics, ravenry. Maybe he's just not that great at this. And of course, the Citadel is going to select someone, especially for Grand Maester. It's a highly political position. And maybe...
mostly politics.
Yeah, maybe he just isn't that good of a healer. It's a very mundane explanation that I think is... Yeah, why not consider that? I mean...
You don't be such an ageist, is what they're saying. By saying it's his age.
John Malarkey,
sometimes people just suck.
He's an old, he doesn't get it.
Yeah. So Malarkey also goes on to say, and this is not Malarkey. Yeah, this is a good point. He says, this theory would appear to be supported in the text. When Viserys cuts his hand on the Iron Throne, Mellos is unsuccessful at treating it, but it is healed by Rhaenyra's Maester Gerardus, who amputates the fingers, and Gildane even suggests in the texts that Melos's leeching was less efficacious than the potions of Gerardus. And remember, he suggests leeching. I forgot about that. He suggests leeching in the scene, so that's a very good attention to detail by the showrunners again. I'm gonna assume T gets credit for that one, but maybe not. Maybe Ryan or one of the others noticed that. But that's a really good connection there, that they noticed that Mellos preferred leeching in Fire and Blood, so they had him do that here in episode 1. And yeah, good call. I like that. So yeah, Joe, let's hear your thoughts on some of this. Where do you stand?
So I brought up the same things during my stream after the episode, where I noticed that before you get to the birth scene, you mentioned they have the thing where Viserys is wounded already. He has the thing on his back that they're trying to treat, and you notice Melos has been treating it unsuccessfully, but it's the young maester, the very young one, who looks like he's like maybe like 20 or something, just goes like, why don't we just cauterize this? And Melos goes, oh yeah, of course, I guess that's what we should do.
Yeah,
which
that's interesting.
The fact that the young guy suggested it so fast and it's so obvious that Melos agreed to it suggests either he's bad at it or he was being intentionally bad at it.
Yes,
one of the two. I'm guessing it was unintentionally for the reasons you said. Like the Grand Maester often has other maesters underneath them. Like it's unusual the way Pycelle did it, where it's basically a one-man show kind of.
Yes.
Most of them have like apprentices to deal with the other stuff going on in the Red Keep. So, but if you wanted to go conspiratorial, there definitely could be an idea that Melos is giving intentionally bad advice.
Yes.
Or he seems to have a close relationship with Otto Hightower. And my chat didn't like this. I was like, oh my God, what if he actually killed Balon? Like, maybe that's why he died so quickly. But they did the cough thing very quickly. So that was obviously.
And the baby was never crying,
but,
so the baby was always weak. You know, that's a big deal. Yeah. But still.
But I think the more reasonable version of that is, did he give Viserys bad advice about how safe it was for Emma to get pregnant again? Did he intentionally give her that kind of advice?
Totally.
Saying
agree,
like, listen, she's strong, she's a Targaryen, she's exceptional, she can get through it. Whereas I think most competent healers at the time probably would have said like, you know, after like 6 kids and 5 of them dying, maybe give it up.
It would have been like Elia, where they're like, no more. Or like Nerys, Queen Nerys. Who was like,
exactly.
Don't, like the Maesters were like, no more. She can't have another child.
So that's kind of the conspiracy here. Maybe they're going to expand it more. Bad or intentionally bad.
Yeah. Okay. Right on. And yeah, there's a little more to that, like the bath temperature. Like they wouldn't let her have a hot temperature, where Dany loved hot baths. And it's like that's small. Those are small things, but if you add them all up, maybe there's something going on.
Yeah,
so
I think that speaks more to her lack of power and control over her own life than anything else. Just that she can't even choose her own damn like bath temperature.
Yeah. That's a good point. We actually I have a whole section on childbirth here, but we're running short on time, and childbirth is going to be a theme that continues to be important throughout the season. So we can come back to this some other time. Let's move on, and we'll get to the dream and all that stuff, because that's one of the main things we've got you here for, Joe. Another question that came through was from Tanaman. Other people brought this question up too, but Tanaman, we're using their version of the question. Just comparing the simplicity, putting it simply, the idea that there must be a Targaryen on the Iron Throne, considering Aegon's dreams, versus there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. Comparing those two concepts, it's a good catch. Like, I wonder where, that might just be more of a political thing, but maybe there's a supernatural reason behind that as well. Maybe, it's well established that prophecies can be detected by multiple sources, right? The prince that was promised is not a Targaryen-only prophecy. Melisandre had the idea. It existed before the Targaryens. It's really old. Azor Ahai is an ancient legend, ancient prophecy. Multiple people have detected other prophecies that exist. There's plenty of examples of that, of like the Werewood Net gets it, so does the Red Priests. So it's entirely possible that Starks of old had some reason to think that similar to a Targaryen must sit the Iron Throne, we must have a Stark in Winterfell. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It comes from Aegon.
Yeah, maybe it does.
I suggested in my my video on the other day, and I'm not the first one to come up with this by far, but the idea that maybe Torrhen and Aegon came to sort of an understanding. Like, what if Aegon believed that part of the prophecy was that why he didn't nuke the Starks off the face of the earth is that he believed that they were going to be important, maybe not just like practically in terms of having a 45,000 man strong army if something happens, but also the idea if he somehow saw them prophetically as an important part of it, especially if you look forwards to the future. It'd be funny if Aegon, like one of the important things about the prophecies that we're going to get into is the time is very much uncertain as long as what you're seeing. So it'd be funny if Aegon saw something, thought it was about Torrhen, and it was actually like something like Jon in the future.
Oh yeah, because there's so many theories and you got me started on this a long time ago, and I think it's one of the very good theories about what the Targaryens have been dreaming of. Is they're dreaming of Dany. They all thought they were Dany. Exactly. It's the one that like Aerys thinking he's gonna go on a pyre and burn up
Aegon,
the dragon.
Aryan. Yeah, it's all over the place.
It really is all over the place. So if you can include that idea, it fits super well. And then you throw in something like you said, Torrhen Stark, the king who knelt. that adds so much to this meeting between Aegon and Torrhen and why he knelt instead of they fought. Usually, because a lot of Northerners were like, why did they
up
fight?
to fight.
Yeah, and they did. You're right. They showed up to fight. And the one, his brothers, like, I'll assassinate the dragons. They were ready to go. But no, they just said no. And of course, it makes sense. You can easily explain that. Yeah, he could see that they were going to lose. So he bent the knee. Simple as that. But there's definitely room for it to be more.
There's room for more.
Room for a lot
Especially
more.
because you hear in the aftermath that Torrhen basically faced down several small rebellions afterwards. He lost control of some of his vassals because of that, and some of them went to Essos to form a sellsword company because they were so pissed at him for not even attempting to fight.
Yeah. And we see
makes sense.
And we see the Northerners very often. They're quite willing to die. They're like, well, I mean, we're here to die. What is it?
We come to die for the
we
dragon.
Come to die for the dragon. Exactly, Roddy the Ruin. I mean, you have Northerners like that. You're like, of course they came to die. Like they don't care that they're going to lose. That's fine for them. So so it really does add a lot to that kneeling, more than we would have suspected at first. So that's great. A couple more things here that segue us into this greater dragon dream topic. A couple of super chats from Mr. Marmello from New Zealand. Hype, #Master Z, and Hype Ashori Hightower. We got some nicknames added to this, don't we? And this great question from Lore of Lore. Go ahead.
By the way, how dirty is the throne that the cuts get infected like that? I just really like that idea because of two things. One, I like the idea of like someone like coming around and like cleaning each sword on the throne, like dusting it, you know? Terrible job. But then I also really like the idea of someone putting poison on the tips of it, knowing that like if you just touch it, then you get them. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what like Targaryen kings did to their naughty kids. Go clean every sword.
Yeah, it's like Tyrion being made to clean all the cisterns. It's like you got to clean every sword on the Iron Throne.
There's hundreds.
Back when you're done, use a toothbrush. Actually, we don't have toothbrushes. Use a feather.
Okay, so a Song of Ice and Fire OG Aegon version. It's not often we get a chance to just rethink everything, but like I brought up at the beginning with King Bran, that is probably a good parallel example of something that makes us have to look at half the lore all over again. It's a true we should start back moment. So Viserys may not share it with his new son Aegon, but there's so many questions coming like that. Like when Aegon is born, he's not going to tell him right away, but when he comes of age, is he going to... Well, he's going to always see Rhaenyra as his heir. He's never going to pivot from that. He's going to insist she's his heir. But it doesn't... So we probably won't see Aegon II find out that way. But who else will she tell? You brought that up earlier. And it's important to note that we're covering like 28 years of timeline here in this first season. That's a lot of like people being born, people passing down the song, maybe even more than once. So it's long been suspected by some. This theory, the idea that Aegon was a dreamer has existed since there was only one book out, but there was nothing to prove it. It was just something that people creatively thought up. Turns out they were onto something. And you and I guess Crowfoot's daughter were probably the first two to really turn me on to the idea. I remember one stream where I was just like, no. And then by the end of the stream, I was like,
I remember.
By the end of the stream, I was like, yeah. y'all totally convinced me in the course of about 45 minutes. So
that's what I mean at the beginning, Aziz. You are reasonable. It's hard to get over your wall of reason.
Once you get over
the bar there, you have to get over.
You're right. Once we're over the wall, we're over it. But you're right. Sometimes that wall is tall. So yeah, speak to us for a minute on how this came around. Take your victory lap and tell us whatever you want to say about this to lead us into it.
So I have a whole playlist on my channel called Dreams of Dragons, where I routinely add things to them that tangentially talk about this, and it's up to like 25 videos and streams at this point.
That's nice.
Obviously, as you said, me and Amanda are by no means the first people to think of this. The fandom's long and wide, and not everything gets documented. Not everyone puts it on YouTube or a podcast. So
yeah,
it's one of those things where if you thought of something, somebody probably did too. You just haven't heard about it. But in particular, one thing that me and Amanda, and this actually goes back to my Waymar Royce theory, the one I did back in the day, the one that won Best New Theory on the Song of Ice and Fire board, is the idea that I think that prophecy has a much bigger role than people give it credit for. That you should be looking for it in places that you're not, that you don't think you should. Like the Waymar theory is just the idea, do the others have prophecy too? are they looking for the prince that was promised from the other side? And so a lot of
kill them,
those kind of to kill him before they can get him. I mean, we're not talking about that one. I mean, maybe that one will become true in that sense. That would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
But specifically for Aegon the Conqueror and the Targaryen kings, they have so many strange decisions they make. Totally bonkers things, especially guys like Baelor the Blessed. But other kings who just like completely veer off the beaten path. Aegon the Fifth is maybe the biggest one with Summerhall, which is kind of what got me going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, what the hell was he thinking? And it's, if you imagine all the Targaryen kings like as a cloud, I guess, just like floating there, there's this one string, and if you tug on it, all of a sudden they all go in a straight line. All their decisions make sense. If you assume that they're reacting to prophetic dreams, dragon dreams, and particularly the Song of Ice and Fire, suddenly characters like Aegon the Fourth, he seems like he's just trying to burn down the world. But what if he thinks the world is ending anyway? He has no dragons and there's nothing he can do about it. Well, one reaction to that might be, well, screw it. Whatever, just enjoy the time I have left. There's no point in fighting it.
Or just make
Other
a million
people-
Targaryens and one of them will survive. Like that's what he legitimizes all his bastards. That made a lot of Targaryens, even though they didn't call themselves Targaryen. Still,
Aegon the Third, he hates dragons, but he tries to bring them back anyway, despite his. Well, I'm not going to spoil why he hates them, but there's a very good reason for it.
Highly telling.
And like Daeron the First and Baelor and all the crazy things he does, you just tug that string of prophecy and dragon dreams. Again, you can find an easy, logical reason for everything. And I think that's an important part of the story that a lot of people have overlooked, because the way it's presented, especially in the ancient histories and the World of Ice and Fire and the way characters talk about it, is not like this. None of the maesters don't document this stuff at all. Actually, that's been one of the biggest pushbacks I've been getting on my videos about it. And people are like, but that's not what Fire and Blood said. I'm like, I'm saying it was wrong.
Yeah.
I'm saying they intentionally did not know about this.
Viserys straight up says that. It's not in the histories.
It won't be in the histories. That's the point. You just have to kind of look at them empathetically and imagine, how would you react to learning this?
Yeah.
And if you put yourself in their shoes, you can kind of see it. Like the idea with Summerhall that you mentioned, is my idea was that Egg saw a vision of Daenerys hatching the dragon eggs, but he saw it symbolically. He saw it in the way that we know that Daemon II and Daeron do, where it's not literal. It's really hard to figure it out. So he interpreted and then tried to make it true. Unfortunately, as many Targaryens do, their attempt makes the future happen.
Yes.
Same thing with Aerion and Aerys, where they have this crazy idea that wildfire will turn them into dragons. It's like, what the hell is that about? Well,
Where did that come
Dany
from?
walks into the flames and walks out with dragons. You can see how that imagery could cross over into itself. And the big reveal here is obviously Aegon the Conqueror is the one with the Song of Ice and Fire dream that he saw the others coming, and how that motivated him to conquer Westeros, and all those other weird logic things. Like one of them is like, why didn't he help the Night's Watch? Why did he focus so much on Dorne? Well, because he thought he needed a united Westeros.
Yeah.
That was a big part of it. He saw himself as the king of all, and that's the only way he could win. So
I watched one of your videos as well, and you pointed out that the wall was in very good shape at that point too.
It was in good shape.
It didn't need.
That's one thing I think people forget.
A lot of work at that point. Yeah.
When Aegon took on Harren the Black, he basically didn't have an army. He just had Balerion. He had a few Riverlords supporting him, but they were iffy. And it was a real threat if Lord Commander Hoare was going to march all his troops down and kill Aegon and Rhaenys and Visenya and take out their dragons. They're like, maybe they could. The Night's Watch is nothing to mess with.
Yeah.
So why would you need to improve it when they're already doing well? And I think it's we talked earlier about Aenys and Maegor and how they seem to be reacting to it too in just different ways. I think it's a really cool way that George has been doing this, and it makes sense obviously when you look at his other works. So much of his other works are about these weird, dreamy, time travel-y things where it just kind of comes up, and he likes imagining how it's a very George exercise to imagine, I'm going to take 18 people, I'm going to give them the same prophecy, how do they react?
18
and then
different
write
ways.
that into a history.
Yes. Okay, so let me add a couple things to what you said. That was fantastic. What a great lead into all this topic.
I've been talking about it for like 3 weeks straight. I got it down.
You do have it down. You can tell. Yeah, you've got it honed. It's sharpened like Valyrian steel. So a couple things. Aegon, like you said, Aegon's dream could have been interpreted wrong. He could have gotten plenty of things wrong. That's another thing, like, why didn't he do more here and there? Well, we don't know what was in his dream. And we know that no dream is possible to tell to somebody else. He told his interpretation of his dream to his heir,
Right.
and it's like the game of telephone. It's not even like they're reading the same prophecy. They're being told by a different person. Now, in some cases, maybe it was written down. Maybe some of them did read about it. After all, Rhaegar read about stuff. Aerys the First read about stuff. So there's options there as well. But you're right. If you look at looking at Maegor's actions, Maegor went after the faith. That was like one of the defining things of his role. Well, why didn't Aegon tell the world about his prophecy? Well, I got a great answer for that. First of all, people would think he was crazy potentially. But second of all,
Yes, very much so.
Second of all, even if you take that away, he was trying to openly take on the religion of his people, which was the faith of the Seven. You can't take on the faith of the Seven, yet also speak to the prophecy of A Song of Ice and Fire, which has nothing to do with the faith of the Seven, would be completely blasphemous. So he would be undermining his attempt to seem like a worshiper of the faith. The High Septon would be like, nah, dog, what the hell is that? You know, what is this? What is this?
Septon saying, bringing back nah, dog.
Yeah, he's like, nah, dog. Yeah, sorry, we're not down with that. Yeah, but it just doesn't work, right? So he can't come openly doing that. So maybe that's why Maegor hated the faith. He's like, this is the reason we can't. I mean, it doesn't excuse what Maegor does. That's gonna be.
Oh no, nobody excuses it. It just makes you understand.
Yeah, it's like, well, maybe this was his twisted logic. Well, like he thinks, oh, I got to get rid of the faith because they're the reason we can't openly talk about this prophecy and like really get the world ready for it. And you're right. It explains Dorne and all those other things. Yeah, go ahead.
To add on to your example about them getting it wrong, I think people misunderstand how wrong they get it. Like my favorite one is Daemon II in the Mystery Knight. He sees a dragon hatching from an egg at White Walls, and by the end of the story, it's, oh no, it wasn't a real dragon, it was a metaphorical dragon. It was about Aegon's confidence in how he will become king. It's like, if that's the level of misunderstanding George is playing with, you should have no expectation that Aegon or his predecessors got it even remotely right. Because how could you? How could you see that dream and go, oh, this is obvious about the youngest son of Maekar who's nowhere near the throne and become king someday?
Yeah.
That's impossible.
And the dream is unite. Now, Shea and I, a drum we've been banging a long time applies here, which is that we have been saying Azor Ahai, not so much a warrior, but a uniter. Someone who unites people. Jon Snow uniting wildlings, Northerners, Night's Watch, Stannis' people. Daenerys uniting Dothraki, Unsullied, Giscari, etc. Ironborn, whoever else is going to be in her army. Red Priests, whatever. That's the true quality of Azor Ahai that matters most. So if Aegon dreamed of this prince that was promised, which maybe is the same as Azor Ahai, he interprets unite as conquer. And right there, you've got, okay, so people are like, oh, Aegon had a justification. No, he didn't. He had an interpretation. And if he interpreted unite as conquer, then you can easily see where he was like, dude, that's not uniting so much as forcing, you know? So that right there, you've got an explanation for something that Aegon interpreted that he could have easily been wrong about, you know? And
his
like you said, there's
too.
so many possibilities.
If Azor Ahai is a uniter, Aenys is the uniter. But if Azor Ahai is the man with the flaming sword, that's Maegor.
Yeah.
Both of them taking totally different interpretations of the same thing.
Totally. With the same dragon, you know? Like,
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
contemporaries at the same time just veering wildly on what they have to do.
So consider that how much groundwork is in place for this as well. We have Daenerys' visions in the House of the Undying. Let's also have Viserys' quote. We have the transcript here. Let's read that first, just to refresh ourselves.
Where did you want me to start from the quote? That's my question. We never talked about that, so I don't actually know what you want. What I don't know.
The idea that we just control dragons.
Oh. The idea that we control the dragons is an illusion. They're a power man should never have trifled with, one that brought Valyria its doom. If we don't mind our own histories, it will do the same to us. Targaryen must understand this to be king or queen. Then he goes on. Which other part did you want?
Just the dream itself.
There's something else. Okay, let's see. Our histories, they tell us that Aegon looked across the black water from Dragonstone and saw a rich land ripe for the capture, but ambition alone is not what drove him to conquest. It was a dream. And just as Daenys foresaw the end of Valyria, Aegon foresaw the end of the world of men. 'Tis to begin with a terrible winter gusting out of the distant north. Aegon saw absolute darkness riding on those winds, and whatever dwells within will destroy the world of the living. When this great winter comes, Rhaenyra, all of Westeros must stand against it, and if the world of men is to survive, a Targaryen must be seated on the Iron Throne, a king or queen strong enough to unite the realm against the cold and the dark. Aegon called his dream the Song of Ice and Fire.
That's it. Yeah, it's good
Cool.
enough. Okay, so
credits.
Yeah.
So a couple points there as well. Some things that are very interesting on the surface that deserve mention. One is that it says the Targaryens is at the Iron Throne to beat them and to unite the realm. Now, if we remember,
I think that's interpretation.
Yeah, by show canon,
Definitely.
Daenerys was arguably on the Iron Throne, but arguably she wasn't. But the realm definitely was not united in show canon when the others were defeated.
Nope.
Like, they were big time war still raging in the south. Euron was still on the loose. Cersei was still doing her thing. Presumably in the book canon, Phaegon might be around.
So my interpretation of this is that the dream itself basically was telling him, hey, you guys need to have dragons for this. They took it and have, as it has been passed down, now Viserys is saying it as if we need to be on the Iron Throne. But I don't personally think that the original dream had anything to do with the Iron Throne or having conquered Westeros or being the ruler. I think it had to do with their power. But my question there, and where it maybe got lost in translation from Aegon to Viserys, is that Viserys does not seem like he loves his dragons or that he prizes them as like the defenders. So if he knew that it was the dragons that was what they needed to defend themselves, I feel like there would be a couple of things. One, there would be like a mandate, like, hey, make sure we have more dragons. Let's have dragon eggs. And I feel like there would be more of a focus on it. And I don't think he would have approached the conversation this way. But that doesn't mean that Aegon didn't dream of the dragons being important. It just means that it hasn't passed down to Viserys.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That's a real conundrum about the Viserys is like, we never should have messed with dragons. We never should have messed with dragons. On the other hand, Aegon had this dream that we have to, and the dragons were important. So, like, that's a real puzzler. What do you think, JoeMagician?
I think Ashay, you bring up a really good point that just because that's what Aegon said to Aenys or Maegor does not mean that's what he saw. Like, and even if what he saw, you can't even trust what that is. So it's very likely that, like, I hate this image from the House of the Undying, but there's one of the dwarfs around the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if he saw something like that, and then like they were wearing like sigils or something like that? And he's like, oh, that means I must rule all of them or something like that. It's like, it's entirely plausible. It's that hard to understand. And also, Viserys goes back and he describes what we know as the others, but to him, to Aegon, he would have been like, how are you supposed to pinpoint what that means?
Yeah, what is that?
An endless winter, and it's like riding in darkness. Like, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? Yeah, it's very odd. Yeah, riding, like riding what? I mean, yeah, it's very confusing. So you can see why it would be very open to interpretation. A Song of Ice and Fire is rife with prophecy can't be trusted type considerations and hints. So there's no reason why we should take Aegon's dream as perfectly interpreted or perfectly accurate or, yeah.
Or also not to use hindsight. Just because we know it's the others doesn't mean they do.
Right.
They probably literally. I'm curious if any of them figured out that dream meant the others were returning.
Yeah. Did they ever make the connection?
Aemon doesn't.
Yeah, did they make that connection? Who did they?
Are they aware of those
What
legends?
did they know about the others in the first place?
Maybe Alicent, because she's the only one that went to the wall.
You think she would?
She might be the only one that figured it out.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, because you like the others. Yeah, did they ever consider that was the? They make, like you said, did they make that connection? Is it like this is the ancient evil, this darkness? But have they heard of the others? Like this is some really old story from the north.
But yeah, they are known.
They're newcomers.
Yeah,
yeah,
the newcomers.
And also, no, like I said this in my video. That is a primary part of both stories. Nobody believes them, even when they're back.
Yeah,
to your point of
right.
why did Aegon not tell anybody? Even if he figured it out, everyone would call him crazy. It's like, what, the others? What, you mean like Snarks and Grumpkins and Giants? Those things don't exist.
Yeah, it had been, what, 7,700 years since they had been seen when his time? Now it's 8,000? Like, yeah, it's not that different, really. Yeah, like
So
Garrett.
there's a lot of room for error.
Yeah, Garrett ran away in fear rather than expect to be
Literally
believed.
told Ned.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Ned didn't believe it either. So yeah, you're right. Like even if the Stark and Winterfell doesn't believe it, like how are the Targaryens going to conceive that properly? So yeah, there's a lot of what we take for granted as knowledge. We have to put ourselves in their shoes, and it's a very different picture. But if we fast forward to some things that George has laid clues for, let's have one of the most important quotes from Dany's House, The Undying Vision, where she encounters her brother.
Viserys was her first thought the next time she paused, but a second glance told her otherwise. The man had her brother's hair, but he was taller, and his eyes were a dark indigo rather than lilac. Aegon, he said to a woman nursing a newborn babe in a great wooden bed. What better name for a king?
Will you make a song for him?
The woman asked. He has a song, the man replied. He is the prince that was promised, and his is the song of ice and fire. He looked up when he said it, and his eyes met Dany's, and it seemed as if he saw her standing there beyond the door. There must be one more, he said, though whether he was speaking to her or to the woman in the bed, she could not say. The dragon has 3 heads. He went to the window seat, picked up a harp, and ran his fingers lightly over its silvery strings. Sweet sadness filled the room as man and wife and babe faded like the morning mist, only the music lingering behind to speed her on her way.
The song, the music behind her.
What literal song.
Boy, this passage has always been amazing, and now it's even more amazing.
Chills.
It's so good. So
reading a Shea.
So a lot of things to say about this quote. First of all, it's huge that it's the only time a Song of Ice and Fire is ever said in a Song of Ice and Fire, except for when Dany repeats this dream. She says it out loud like 2 other times. So it's either this or Dany repeating it. That's it. And one huge thing pointed out to me by shout out to Sweet Sunray, Jill on Twitter. She pointed out that Rhaegar's looking right at her as if it's like passing on the knowledge of the dream, and maybe that's an important point. But also, how about the fact that no one passed it down to Dany, but she got it anyway? Like
almost like there was somebody else involved in making sure it happened.
Yeah, someone else, other people who know about the prophecy and need to make sure it gets in the right hands. Maybe like a Quaithe. Quaithe is a great example because we, at the time of our last Valar Rereadus, we noted that everyone who Dany meets at Karth wants something from her, except Quaithe. Quaithe is only there to tell her things, which was always a little peculiar because it's like everybody has an agenda. Everybody has an agenda. What is this Quaithe, just some nice person that's just here to help Dany? Clearly can't be that. But if thinks she's helping save the world, well then that makes a lot of sense. Even though it's big, high magic that maybe we're not suspecting would have been in place at that point, it definitely fits. What about? I've got more to say about this, but JoeMagician, let's hear from you now on some of this.
So one thing that has been come up a lot is the idea. I think we're probably going to get to this, but the idea of like a broken chain of knowledge. It seems very likely that Robert's rebellion broke both sides of the chain of knowledge from the Targaryens. That it seems like Rhaegar was tuned in, probably Aerys, because he seems to be a dragon dreamer himself. But also, if you assume the Starks know about the Song of Ice and Fire, remember that Ned was not the heir to Rickard. Rickard and the heir died far away from him. So it's possible that at Robert's rebellion doomed the world in a way by cutting them both off. And it makes a lot of sense that Rhaegar would know about it. We have his letters to Aemon where they're arguing about it, and he's like, well, I'm the prince. Well, no, it's my kid. The stories that he's in the scrolls, that he goes to Summerhall all the time. The idea that he knows the tune to the Song of Ice and Fire. He can play it on the harp. That's pretty insane. Yeah. Also to the thing that Sweet Sunray said to you, this is something I've wondered about a while. It's especially something that I think you guys will appreciate as you read George's old works. He loves the idea of doorways. He likes the idea that a door in like magic or reality can go both ways. You know, you step through one way, you can go back. And it would be fascinating thinking about like the Summerhall idea about the ripples in the dreamscape. If Rhaegar also saw Dany at the same time, and that this moment is so important that it echoed back to him the same as she is seeing him.
Nice.
Like it was a meeting across time.
That would be very cool.
I love that idea because we've already raised this issue. Like other Targaryens were dreaming of her. in their visions.
Not Rhaegar. And she
Why
often
not her?
sees
Yeah.
herself as Rhaegar. What if she's having Rhaegar's dreams from the past?
Because it's the same prophecy that they're both tapping into. Their
Right.
bloodline, the Targaryen bloodline, gives them this magical ability to see the
got
same
it.
thing. The same thing in the future that they're all seeing. It's not, it's the same event that they're all time traveling through their dreams to see in some way, or the visions of the future.
Well, George uses the metaphor of a river. So
Yeah.
they're seeing each other on the same point in the river.
Makes
Like
a
it's
lot
like the
of
bend
sense.
and they can see each other across it.
Yeah, and they just aren't sure what they're seeing. They're maybe seeing metaphorical dragons as real dragons instead of people,
Then
and yeah,
Sometimes they see each other.
sometimes they see each other.
Ooh, it gets even more interesting. When Rhaegar saw Dany, what do you think he made of that? If this actually
Ooh,
happened, if he turned
yeah.
around and saw just a woman standing in the door that he's never seen before, what do you think? What do you think he made of
I
that?
think in this dream, he's thinking of the one more. When he sees her,
Yeah,
I think he's thinking
next-
that's who
next child.
he thinks that's the Visenya.
exactly. What if he
Aegon,
thinks
his
that's his
Rhaenys.
next daughter?
Yeah, I think that's what. That's a great.
Yeah,
theory.
yeah. I do feel very strongly, as everyone knows, that Rhaegar just thought he was going to have a girl.
Yeah.
Like
I
I
felt
feel
like- I
Rhaegar
think
really
so.
thought that. It's John Visenya Snow. That's his middle name.
Yeah, John Senya. Yes, it's not a ship.
Yeah.
Usually that's a ship.
Yeah, he's not Aegon, he's not Aemon, he's not Jaehaerys, he's Visenya. Which was actually really funny too in House of the Dragon, how we had that line like we already have our Visenya.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. That's like a recurring thing. It's like them
Yeah.
wanting to fill the three heads of the dragon and all that.
Visenya's birth,
By the
episode
way,
10. I really think
just-
that's what's going to happen.
Quick digression, but I saw a Twitter poll asking who people thought was the Visenya that Viserys was referring to.
It has to be Daemon.
Daemon.
We thought it was. I'm like, I had zero doubt in my mind. It was, and I still, to be clear, have zero doubt. I'm like, these people are wrong, but it was like 30% people thought Damon.
Only 30%.
Only like
Who do they think?
30%. It was, but there
Could
was
be like
four
90.
options.
He's Visenya.
People thought it was Rhaenyra, or that it was like I know it was correct.
At
I
that
again,
point?
I know again. I'm like they were just super wrong, but I was astonished by how many people were that
Interesting.
wrong to vote. It was Damon was not the majority. The poll wasn't over when I finished,
Wow.
but anyways, it's a digression. But we didn't even consider the idea that it would be anyone other than Damon. It just is so obvious because literally he says we already have our Visenya. And how is your brother?
Yeah.
It's very clear. If Viserys didn't mean that, Emma sure took it as him meaning that.
People are never wrong on the internet, Ashaya. They're always nobody's ever wrong.
Oh, I
there.
think that was
So,
the other. People said maybe the third child. There was like one other option. I was like, it was weird. I don't know. People are wrong.
Anyway, yeah. Okay. Well,
Oh,
that'll be
digression.
more clear. I don't think that'll become more
Yeah.
clear over time. Maybe. Maybe not.
Oh, just quickly, I want to say hi to Crowfoot's daughter. She showed up in the chat.
Oh, hey, Amanda.
She woke up and started DMing me, and I think she's gonna start making videos again.
Oh, she's inspired again. That's fantastic. Hell
She's
yeah.
very
That's
inspired by
great.
the Aegon and the Dream Talk. So I think
Fantastic.
we're gonna get some more insights from Crowfoot's
Well, that's
daughter.
another thing we can thank Ryan Condal for then. Ryan Condal got Amanda to start making videos again.
Well, she's at least thinking about them,
Yeah.
actually. And also, Archmaester Emma, she wrote that really. Actually, this is in the doc. We're going to talk about it
Yeah,
later. But she wrote a
we can
really
talk about
good
that now.
essay after the first episode, and well, she really liked my videos, to say the least.
Yeah.
So she kind
So
of
did
like
I.
filled in a
Mhm.
lot of blanks
Cool.
that I left.
All right, actually, only one more point I have to make before we get to the point that Emma raises, which is indeed a really good one. Something about Rhaegar that I think is interesting. It's definitely something to put on the shelf. It's not something to decide about now. But Rhaegar knew that he was, or thought rather, he knew, meaning was convinced. Obviously, we know he was wrong. He thought that he was himself the prince that was promised, and his children were the prince that was promised. But despite fulfilling a prophecy, he was still didn't force his wife to have another kid. Now, again,
No.
Lyanna, who he handled that badly. I don't think there's any reason why he had to announce it in front of everybody at the tournament. I don't see any reason why the prophecy called for that. So there's certainly, this doesn't excuse Rhaegar's behavior, but it definitely adds a wrinkle to, like, he cared enough about his wife that he wasn't forcing her to have a child, even when he thought the world depended on it. He's like, oh
Yeah.
no, why don't I just have a kid with someone else, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, just something else to add to the uncertainty around Rhaegar as a person. At least in this, he comes out as better than Viserys. But maybe,
I mean, there's
maybe
other
not
examples too that
things.
show how bad Viserys is. Like
True. Mhm.
Rhaena screaming at Storm's End is a direct parallel.
Yes.
It's literally they lifted that scene
Mhm.
and turned it.
Yeah.
They turned Rogar into Viserys, but otherwise it's the same thing.
You're
We're
right.
only missing somebody screaming at him at this point,
Yeah.
which maybe is coming.
Yeah, I have to wonder if it's possible that Rhaenyra might get angry about this still to come. Like she's kind of
Sure.
has dealt
She
with,
should be.
she's kind of has tampered it down and isn't dealing with it. But I feel like she's still got anger about it.
Yeah, Viserys was a little bit a hypocrite about that. I mean, in a few ways, but one in
Yeah.
particular that I think I haven't seen people mention is that he said, like, he yelled at Daemon for partying while instead of comforting him or Rhaenyra. And then when he goes to talk to Rhaenyra's like, you haven't said a word to me since the funeral.
Yeah, well,
So it's like, you haven't done that
yeah.
either.
Absolutely. He's just been playing with his toys
Yeah.
and not talking to his daughter.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, like, he
Quit
came
playing
around, but
Warhammer
still,
and beat
yeah,
Dad.
that was
Yeah.
definitely hypocritical. So, yeah, let's talk about what Emma's point. Emma's point is really good. This is one that has long permeated the fandom, one that people have looked at, but they didn't have the reason to look at it like we've ever had now. Emma went straight to it. All the winters that we have on record, and how did the Targaryens behave during those winters? Did they think, oh my God, whenever there was a long winter, did they panic and think, oh my God, this is it? And Joe, you mentioned this earlier, like some of their behavior is a little weird, but it's a lot less weird when you look at it under the light of the Song of Ice and Fire. For example, one of my favorites is during the fall spring, the year 281, right before Robert's Rebellion, there was a really nasty winter. When the one where Aerys was using wildfire to drive away some of the cold. He was like putting wildfire lamps up and things like that. So, like, yeah, it was set up even there, and then many other examples. What are some of your favorite examples, JoeMagician? And shout out Archmaester Emma, by the way. Yes,
Archmaester Emma. Yeah. I'm gonna throw the link in the chat so people can go read it too.
Yeah.
I think the one that really hit me, I had never really thought about, and I didn't realize that Aegon's attempted conquest of Dorne overlapped with the start of winter.
Yes.
Like specifically his attack on Planky Town.
I never noticed that either.
And how he all of a sudden was like, I have to conquer Dorne. This cannot wait. Everything stops until I get them under my rule. And it's like, boy, that was a weird decision. It's like, well, no, not if he thinks this is the end of the world.
Yeah.
So many of these characters, like the second one snowflake drops, the Targaryen kings just go like,
uh-oh.
Oh shit.
And there are some particularly nasty winters on record.
Also the shivers one really got me about
yeah.
Jaehaerys and how he was like, if he interpreted this is another thing that makes me think that they didn't really know what Aegon's dream meant, because they panicked at the fact that the Targaryens were getting sick by the shivers. And it's like, well, maybe if they thought it was a plague coming from the north that was going to end all life, it would make sense why it wasn't just, oh no, I lost my daughter and some of my family's dying. It's like, what if this is the end? What if this is literally the end and I can't do anything about it?
Do you remember? And you of course remember how they react to her coming down with the shivers. Jaehaerys has that really odd reaction, like she needs a dragon. She has to have a dragon. Get her a dragon.
Right.
Like that is always really strange. Not so much now. Now it's like, oh, interesting.
She also said something about Rhaenyra that during the dance there's a winterfall, or it starts to, or something like that.
Yeah, the winter starts in 130. It starts about halfway through the war. So we'll see if the show does that.
So you can imagine how much that must have freaked out Rhaenyra. With Viserys gone, obviously he dies before the dance starts. She, like, the war is going on, and she's like, I have to go north. I have to treat with the Lords of Winterfell. She sends Jace up to treat with them. And then all of a sudden she's like, how am I supposed to fight whatever's going on in the north when I have this full-scale rebellion against me? She must have felt absolutely helpless.
So much pressure.
This is doomsday.
Yeah.
It's not just a civil war. It's not just that she might lose. It's that everybody might lose if she doesn't win this war.
Yeah.
That one hit me really hard. That was really good by Emma.
Yeah, very true.
I guess, is this a good time for me to ask my question for y'all about who knew at this point in the books? Because I do want to, like, we're speaking to the House of the Dragon canon right here. But to be clear, Ryan Condal said that that George told them that Aegon had this dream of the Song of Ice and Fire, and they extrapolated from there about it being passed on.
Yeah, because that makes sense. And it's like, well, if Aegon, George didn't tell them that he passed it down.
He didn't tell them
makes a lot of sense.
He didn't tell them that they didn't pass it down, to be clear as well on that. He didn't say one way or another, but I just want to be clear here that what they were told was about the dream. We do not know for sure if in the book canon they knew.
Yeah. And we know that they take their dreams seriously, given Daenerys and the book Signs and Portents, which was probably still around in Aegon's day. It was probably lost.
Yeah, and we know that it was rediscovered. So we know that whether Rhaenyra in book canon knew the dream, eventually Rhaegar does.
Yeah,
and that's important. So that's important. But I don't know. Do you think that it was passed down? Do you have a strong opinion on it?
I feel like it was lost at some point and rediscovered, but because there's just so much tumult and so many young kings that died, and without the dragons, things maybe look differently. You've got insanity like Aerys, and you've got people like Baelor the Blessed, who might have been a real roadblock to it being passed down with all his book burnings and his belief in the faith and all that. He may have been against passing it down. I don't know. I
really like the idea that Rhaenyra knew. I do. I think it would add a lot to the stress and the weight that she felt on her. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I actually think she knew. I don't think I feel strongly about whether it was knowing that they were not told that it was passed down. I don't have a strong opinion, but I'll say I like the idea that she would.
Yeah, I'm going to lean towards she knew, but I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't. What do you think, JoeMagician?
I think it's possible, like Emma demonstrated here and looking at the other kings, that you can reverse engineer that there's enough of the Targaryen kings who seem to be reacting to it in a varied, but sort of like you can sort of pinpoint what they're reacting to. That if it was lost, I would guess it might actually be around like between like Maekar and Aerys the First. There's a lot of discord during that time with the Great Spring Sickness. That's true.
Right? Yes.
So I wouldn't be shocked if that happens.
And Maekar's reign had the longest winter until the one that begins in A Song of Ice and Fire. So that could have made some people panic. Like if Bloodraven knew, especially, and he was Hand at the time.
Yeah, especially Bloodraven. Does he interpret the dream to be about maybe the Blackfires or something like that? That would be an interesting twist. But asking me this question is like, do I think they were all reacting to it? Yes, obviously. I've thought this for quite a long time. But I guess the passing down thing, how they did it, I wouldn't be shocked if the whole Viserys thing, like it went from heir to king and that was it, is not true, especially in the books, because as you said, that doesn't make any sense for how you go from Maegor to Jaehaerys knowing it. It can't work that way. So obviously I think there's going to be more complications. Although, are we ever going to hear more about this time frame? Probably not. Maybe not. George is done with the Sons of the Dragon. He's done with the Dance of the Dragons. Well, Fire and Blood 2 is going to be after that, right?
Yeah, in the books, I guess I'm thinking that going forward in House of the Dragon, we'll see Aegon's conquest after the Dance of the Dragon.
Yeah.
So
I mean, written stuff. George, I don't think George is coming back to this.
I don't think he's coming back. I agree with you, except for the fact that in the main series, things will reference it, that there's always the chance for some form of flashback.
Bran.
Exactly, with Bran. There's always that
Or
option.
Just in Fire and Blood, too. If you have a Targaryen who, says, this has come down to me straight from Aegon the Conqueror, then you know that the line is unbroken. I mean, that's not likely.
That'd be quite a thing for Galdine to put in.
It doesn't make sense for that to be in the source material like that.
I wouldn't imagine it Fire and Blood.
Although it is in the World of Ice and Fire. This is one thing that I think it's buried in a line about the High Tower, where they're talking about a paragraph about how where the Fuse Stone fortress came from, and then it like twins it with like, oh, by the way, people thought Aegon came to Westeros to had a prophecy about something coming from the north, but it's instantly then dismissed.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for it, it's available from George already in the books.
Cool.
But he did the same way he did around Fire and Blood, where he gave that interview. He's like, well, there are theories about it. And it's like, George, why'd you do this to us?
Well, one way or another, they really got us spinning again. It's a wonderful thing. It was a really well done knowledge drop. And just the evidence of us spending half of an episode talking about it with so much more to come, acknowledging that we have so much more that we haven't talked about. Oh, yeah.
We sort of didn't preview the episode. We did a bit.
I would like to mention one thing about the childbirth thing, just because I keep getting comments about it. I just want to be clear. We've said it multiple times, but yes, they took this Emma scene from Alyssa Velaryon Just again, I just want to repeat that.
Yeah, it does.
Alyssa
It's
Velaryon
almost the
wrote
exact
that
It's
same
almost
moment,
the
yeah.
exact same thing. Barring barring Rhaena getting mad, it's the same situation where Rogar is given a choice on whether to kill her. Basically,
Yeah. Rhaena's like, never.
Pretty sure
Don't
the
put
dialogue's almost exactly the same.
it's very
isn't
similar. Just we just don't have Rhaenyra mad and say,
Yeah.
we don't have Rhaenyra doing that
Rhaena.
particular part, but we do have the other part about choosing to save the child or sacrifice
To get the
her.
knives,
And in Fire and Blood, we have the interesting line where they say, it's possible that Alyssa gave her gave her consent to that, and clearly they decided to go the way that. No, she did not give her consent.
Yeah, which is another question. I don't think Emma knew about the Song of Ice and Fire. I don't think Viserys told her, but it's possible.
She did know that Viserys has dreams because she's not surprised
That's
when
true.
he says
Yeah,
it.
but
She's like,
she
oh,
seems kind of roll her eyes skeptical, which if she'd been like that about other dreams, maybe he wouldn't want to tell her about this one.
Yeah. Yeah,
perhaps.
like if maybe she's had dreams, who knows? But
that's
there's
true.
no indication of that.
Targaryens do.
But she's half Targ,
Yeah,
so
yeah, she
it
totally
wouldn't be
could
strange.
Like when you look at Maekar's children, Aemon says that the dreams killed his brothers every one. If you take that literally, then 4 out of 6 kids in one generation, 160 years later, all have dragon dreams.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Which, by the way, is always an interesting pattern. We have lots of examples of dreamers dreaming about the return of the dragons. Most of the dragon dreams are that. Except for like Daenerys and now Aegon. Most of the dreamers were not during the actual dragon era, right? Like Aegon
Because
is...
George hasn't written about it. If he put
That's
Duncan
part of
Egg
it, yeah.
probably around Aegon's conquest, we'd know a lot more.
Good point. Yeah, very
Yeah,
good
that's a
point.
good point.
Yeah, but it also tells us that the Targaryens have not entered them in the record. They didn't consider it, like they kept it on the down low.
I
It's a
also
secret.
just really, I personally really like the idea that the Targaryens, when they had dragons, had actual dragon dreams, like how skin changers, how wargs have dreams through their creatures. I really like the idea.
I love your Valyria idea.
Yeah, I really like the idea that Viserys was dreaming through Valyrian's eyes, through his memories, and was seeing Valyria. Yes, he had these blueprints. We have that, like we had an interview where he said that that's why he was able to replicate Valyria, is that they brought all these old blueprints. But I like the idea that he also had a different perspective through Balerian's eyes, and so I could see that maybe they had fewer prophetic dreams when they were dreaming through their dragon's eyes or something like that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I get just
I also
time up.
like a linked idea. The whole thing about how skin changers have second lives. I would love the idea of dragon riders have second lives within their dragons. Like when within Balerion is Maegor, Aegon, and Araya.
That's
Yikes.
so funny. All of them like fighting. That's a great
It would explain why
concept.
Balerion's kind of unpredictable.
Yeah. That's great. A comment from Amanda here, sort of a comment from her. I'm pivoting away something from what she said, talking about, she's mentioning a couple things here, but she mentions the library at the Red Keep where Rhaegar found the prophecy, or just whatever made him think he had to be a warrior. Aerys the First also is, according to Egg, rediscovered the prophecy that dragons return in the Red Keep. Those books are probably still there. This is after Baelor. So Baelor's book burning was before this. This is after the Red Keep was restocked with books on prophecy. Clearly they were like, dude, he burned all the good stuff. We got to get some of that back in here. So they clearly restocked
Well, that's what they say.
Yeah.
Do they even know what the good stuff is?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, who knows what Baelor... Some people might have been like, don't let Baelor burn that. Like, they may have been like a mass hiding of books campaign to...
I mean,
shadow.
I think
campaign.
like the top choice for that would be Signs and Portents from Daenerys the Dreamer.
Definitely.
But I made the case in my Aemon the Dreamer video that the reason Rhaegar and Aemon hooked up, that they started writing each other, is because Rhaegar found Aemon writing about it in his youth. Like he was documenting Daemon the Dreamer stuff. He was writing them down and investigating it, and Rhaegar's like, this guy's still alive.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write him. See what he thinks about it.
And we know those two corresponded. That's well recorded.
Something made them do it.
And Aemon was on the wall with Bloodraven, so there's another potential big connection there with lore passing from one important figure to another, which could get it to Rhaegar. So
and Aemon has the
line is there.
Valyrian steel links.
Yeah, sure is. So you can definitely see, you can definitely draw a dotted line from place to place
all
here.
pulls together with that one string.
You're right. It's there. It is really there. All right. I think we should probably get to wrapping up. We wanted to keep this around 2 hours, and it's just about to be 2 hours. So
Yeah.
Lots more to talk about. None of these topics are closed for good. We will continue to think about them. Like we said, this is a new bomb dropped on the fan. We've only had a week to think about, less than a week to think about it, along with all the other things we've had to think about. So it's not like we've been focused only on this new thing. But
we've had a little longer than that because technically, I mean, the whole fandom as a whole, but this news has been out there about this being the case for a little while.
That's true, but still not very long.
Yeah, you know, relatively. I just want to be clear on that because I know we'll get a correction otherwise.
Yeah, good point. Do we have any final questions? Looks like Mr. Marmello sends another super chat, says, Dragon's Dreams.
Dragon Dreams are hard.
But hard. And Antoine...
Deliberately hard. They're puzzles.
They are indeed. And Antoine Dennison says, the Targaryens have a higher calling now? Oh. Yikes.
But yeah. We kind of addressed that already, but I will definitely say that I can see why people are on edge at the idea of there being an excuse for the conquering of people.
Yeah. I don't think that's how George is spinning this.
I don't think that's how he's spinning it either. I don't think it excuses it. It just makes it more complicated.
I think that's what they're going to justify. Yeah. I think the individual characters are going to justify their actions based on the prophecies, but it will not. Like, that's why I brought up Aegon versus Azor Ahai, uniting versus conquering. Mm-hmm. Like, uniting is good. Conquering is questionable at best. So, I got justifications are not implied.
10, 15 comments all saying the same thing. It's like, well, if this is all true, then so you think it's good? I'm like, well, no, that's not the same thing. I respond the same every time. Like, I don't, just because he thinks there's a good cause doesn't mean there's a good reason to burn 10,000 people alive. Like, that's not great.
Yeah.
No,
it ups the level of conflict.
I saw people who were upset about how it excused Rhaegar. And I was like, well, I don't think it excuses him. It really depends, I think, on how much you as a person think the ends justify the means in any given situation. I think it kind of tells on them more than anything. That like they think that if you have a reason, you're allowed to just run over people. But I don't think that's true.
Stannis.
Stannis has a lot in common with Aegon. We were making that comparison in our Dragonstone episode about, sitting there at the painted table. Stannis even says, Aegon sat here at one point and thinking these same things about how he needed to unite the realm, according to Melisandre, in order to do this stuff. And we saw that through Stannis' eyes. Most of what Stannis did was not very justified. Like, the dude wanted to kill a kid. Like,
two. He's going to kill another one.
Like, no, none of us thought that child killing was justified. That almost child killing was justified.
I wouldn't say none of us.
None of us. You're right. Some people out there dead. But it's the same argument. It's like, no, if Stannis kills this child, like, whose side on that argument do you take? Davos or Stannis? Most of us take Davos' side. Like, no. Like, it's not worth killing that child. Ned Stark, same thing.
Some people do think it's worth killing the child. Yeah. I realistically, like, there is a contingent of people that think, if they're telling the truth, and it is the difference between the end of humanity and what, I don't feel that way. But if I was in this world and I truly thought, and I knew for certain that it was the difference, I don't think I would be some honorable person. I don't. But thankfully, I live in the real world where I don't have to make those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, you don't have prophetic dreams that maybe are telling you what's coming in vague terms, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem with Aegon to Stannis to what honestly Daenerys is probably going to go through and already kind of has gone through. It's like, what's the juice? Is the juice worth the squeeze? The road to hell being paved with good intentions. Just because good cause does not excuse everything you do for good cause. Like, that's a very basic idea of morality, and I think it perfectly consistent with George as a writer that he would introduce this throughout the Targaryen history and have each one of them dealing with it.
It's conflict for every single one of them. It's conflict in their heart. Yeah, the heart in conflict with itself. Like, it's super right in line with the way he loves to write and the types of things he loves to introduce to his characters to wrestle with. So, right on. One last point I wanted to make about Dany as well is, and looking at her dreams, it's going to take another look at her dreams, but I don't think she has lots of dreams of icy death. Like, she has the one dream of dragons melting an army of ice at the Riverlands.
She has another one with that people think is Euron.
Okay, yeah, the icy, with the blue lips and all that. So that's one I'm not as sure. I haven't had time to look back on all of Dany's dreams. It's a lot of stuff. So I want to look for, like, is there any maybe something that we could see that might be similar to what Aegon dreamt, or something.
So there's also definitely the problem that I introduced in my longer video talking about prophecy, that glass candles exist and that people are clearly messing with her brain.
Yes.
And it's really hard to tell dragon dreams apart from green dreams and glass candle dreams if the person making them doesn't say, like Quaith does, like, hey, it's me, Quaith. I'm here to talk to you.
I'm here to help you save the world.
Clearly, Sam and Aemon have no idea Marwyn is watching them, so it really calls into question how much of what Dany is even seeing is genuine, or how much is people messing with her brain.
Yeah. And I don't think there's some like conspiracy for someone to want the world to be destroyed and they're telling her the wrong things. But I do believe that someone who legitimately believes that the world could end unless this heroic savior figure does the right things, that they could be like trying to push her in the right direction. That makes sense to me because you could see the motivation there. But like weird villainous, I want the world to end stuff, I don't know that we have that in A Song of Ice and Fire, other than
Euron Greyjoy,
other than the others.
He's Earthon Nightwalker.
Yeah, if Euron is getting into her dreams, that I could maybe see, because he has expressed that that he wants to destroy.
He wants the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's that old theory that he's Earthon, therefore he has a glass candle. He hasn't showed it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he doesn't. He clearly thinks of himself as a fire mage at this point.
So I'm open to the idea, but it has to be something like that. It has to be set up. It can't just be like, oh, they're just trying to sabotage Dany through her dreams. So, but I do fully accept that
think about
her
it.
dreams are
It is
being messed
possible.
with. Yeah, it is. It's on the table.
If it wasn't possible, George, don't put it in the books.
And I can't think of who it would be besides Quaith, right? You know, do you have an idea?
Marwyn has one.
Okay, yeah.
Earthon Nightwalker. There could be other ones out there. Also, the Children of the Forest.
Yeah,
they could
in their
be
own way.
They could be sending green dreams, disguising themselves as dragons.
That's true. It is possible. Cool. All right, well, let's call that a wrap. JoeMagician, tell everybody, like you said, you have a whole playlist of videos on this topic. Tell people where to start, or what's the best place to start, or which one you're most proud of, or however you want to pitch it.
So I think the one you should start with is the one I put out a week or so ago. It's titled "Why Targaryens Conquered Westeros and Prophetic Dreams Explained," because you have to call everything explained on YouTube these days. Also, no one watches it. I'm gonna put that one in the chat if anyone wants to check it out. That's kind of a distillation of like 3 different videos plus like 10 live streams. So that's a real good overview to get into a lot of the topics. There's obviously the Dreams of Dragon playlist. You can check that out. I also put out 2 videos over the last week. Why didn't the Targaryens do anything about the White Walkers? We talked about that a lot today. Also Viserys' dreams and how the show is setting you up to understand that this is a motivation and that's going to screw them up every time, that kind of stuff. As to what's coming up, obviously tomorrow night show goes live. Be going live on my channel right afterwards, and I have a special guest for that one.
So you do. I'm gonna be on JoeMagician's channel right after the episode, which is always an interesting time to talk about an episode, is right after you saw it for the first time. Yeah, fresh. Yeah. So yes, I will be on JoeMagician's stream after the episode. What time do you go live? Is it like at 10:15? 10:15. Okay. So at 10:15, you can find that there. Funnily enough, Aziz is going to be on Robert on In Deep Geek stream before the episode. So we're going to have him streaming, then watch the episode, then me streaming. Very busy day tomorrow.
Mine's Robert's is at 5, so 5 Eastern.
Aziz is going to lose his voice.
Be yelling about like dragons. So thanks for coming, everybody. We appreciate you all hanging out. We're once again just getting started with this amazing run.
Can I also say, I don't think anyone in this chat or in this stream or listening to this episode is relevant to them, but just in case it is, stop spoiling people on the fucking show, you guys. Like, just chill the hell out. You don't need to be a know-it-all. We know that you read the book. You don't need to prove that you know the lore to people. Like, people are like, it's very annoying, but I don't think any of you are that. But like, tell your friends not to do that.
Yeah, we're not talking to y'all, but some of your friends might be doing that.
It's like, people can't resist. Like,
let's
they
get
just
the
can't
community
resist.
to behave a little
I think
better.
people treat it a little bit differently because it's not a book, because it's Fire and Blood, because it's history.
Yeah.
I think people don't treat the spoilers quite with the same respect.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Anyways,
people
Somebody
weren't.
sent me
Most
some
people.
of my DMs, which was fun.
Oh, really? That's no fun.
I mean, I already. It was actually spoilers for the show.
Oh.
Something they had heard from a leak. And I was just like, "What the hell? Why would you do that?
Why would you tell me that?" Yeah.
Yeah, that's so annoying. Everyone here in the chat has been very well behaved in all of our streams. No one has just decided to spoil people, but just Please shame people if they do it. Like, tell them to stop.
Defend the canon. Defend your fellow Westorians' experiences.
I don't know about y'all, but I love seeing people speculate crazy things where they're like, I think that Daemon's going to get Alicent pregnant and it's going to be like, they have this whole thing. And then someone just replies and they're like, actually, no, that's not right because so I'm like,
especially for this, because Fire and Blood is literally written to be uncertain.
Yeah, technically they can't say that for sure. So I hope that some of these people get proven wrong with the things they know.
Oh no, Phil H said spoiler, winter is coming. Winter is coming.
George talked about that in your interview about how important it was that he made Fire and Blood uncertain because it literally, well, he didn't say this part, but it makes it so good for an adaptation that they have room to change things and still have it stick to the overall story. So don't be certain that the interpretation you have of Fire and Blood is even the right one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we want to ask Ryan about on Monday, about how they handled that and how that's a new experience for a showrunner to have this source material to adapt, how it's different than a script. So
yeah, I feel like we could ask him that question and all 30 minutes could just be that one topic.
Yeah.
We're talking about news publishers back in New York, just like George did.
Cool.
Let me tell you about the rivalry between the two newspapers. All right.
Can I tell you also, I got people that were like irritated with me cutting George off in our interview, but y'all, I was fighting for my life trying to get more than like 5 questions asked. Like, it's hard to cut
you
someone
have to cut him off. You just have to. He'll just keep going.
Yeah, you're welcome for all the questions we managed to ask, because I feel like if we didn't cut him off, he would have answered 2 questions and we would have had an hour-long conversation.
And part of it is we can tell when he's going to get into a topic that we know people have heard about. So we're just like, no, we want to stop him because we only had a limited time with him, so we want to try to get it filled with new stuff.
So anyways, none of the people that are criticizing me on the interview are going to listen to this or see this. But y'all, it's so annoying to me because as I edited, I was like, people are going to be mad that I interrupted George right here, but like I had to.
You had to.
And he's a wordy guy. Look at my bookshelf. Look at the size of his books versus the ones above and below. His are massive. The dude likes to talk.
He talks the way he writes.
I guarantee you, at no point did George feel like he was cut off or interrupted.
No.
He was like, this is a conversation where that happened. So that's what really matters.
He's probably used to that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if some random person commenting thinks I was rude to George, because George knows I wasn't rude to him.
Yeah, no, George had a great time. You could tell. Cool. All right, folks, enjoy the episode tomorrow. Thanks very much to JoeMagician. Definitely check out his work on Dreams and other great stuff. His channel is a smorgasbord of fun. So check that out.
He's got some cool shirts too.
That's right. Look at that cool shirt.
Like this one.
Right there. And Aziz is wearing one. I'm the odd one out. I'm in a Rhaenyra shirt. I can't wear this Rhaenyra shirt on our main stream.
It's a spoiler.
It says the half-year queen right on it. I got interviewed, at Comic-Con, and like, I was like, I hope no one really pays attention to my shirt.
Nobody reads shirts.
Yeah, no one reads shirts.
Cool. Okay, everyone, enjoy the episode tomorrow. Have happy House of the Dragon season. We're just getting started. The fun is just beginning. Let's reconvene on Monday, and you'll see all of us on other streams tomorrow as well. But until then, Valar reread us, Valar rewatch us. Good night.
Our outro again. I'm just getting all of our use of it. I'm like, I'll play the beginning and the end of our episodes for right now.
Those drums are cool.
Yeah, I'm just into the outro. I'm like, I'll play it. I don't mind.
Cool.
Maybe I'm meowed.